Chapter 875. The reason why celestial beings were called celestial beings was that they could attract the power of heaven and earth to their bodies. Fighting with celestial beings was equivalent to fighting with heaven and earth. Under heaven and earth, all things were nonentities. Even the lofty immortals, and even the immortal kings and immortal kings who surpassed the immortals and immortals could not fight with heaven and earth. The strength of celestial beings is really unfathomable. I was careless. Jiu Fei was secretly shocked. He used desolation steps and retreated without panic. Dongfang Wudi was in high spirits. He held the cauldron of mountains and rivers in his hand and approached Jiu Fei step by step. He was like a part of the world, squeezing Jiu Fei. Don't struggle needlessly. You are no match for me. Dongfang Wudi's tone was full of killing intent. Jiu Fei must die. Otherwise, if others knew that the cauldron of mountains and rivers was in his hands, not only himself, but also the Dongfang family would be in big trouble. In the human world, the forces of the remote antiquity were the masters, and there were powerful figures in the world. As long as the powerful figures took action, he might be able to protect himself with the divine weapon of the supreme Tao, but the others in the Dongfang family would be in big trouble. Want to kill me? Do you think you are a powerful figure? Is everything under your control? Jiu Fei sneered. He still had a backup plan, so he was not afraid of Dongfang Wudi at all. In fact, he wanted to make Dongfang Wudi relax his vigilance, so he retreated step by step. Whoosh! Dongfang Wudi waved his hand, and more than a dozen lightning bolts fell from the sky. Each lightning bolt was as huge as a mountain, tearing the void and emitting endless destructive aura. Using the power of heaven and earth to turn it into lightning? Seeing this scene, Jiu Fei could not help but be shocked. Celestial beings were really terrible. They could use the power of heaven and earth at will, which was stealing the power of heaven. Bang! Jiu Fei's body shook, and the void around him suddenly shook violently like LNG, and transparent ripples spread out quickly. More than a dozen lightning bolts fell from the sky, and when they encountered the transparent ripples spreading from Jiu Fei's body, they silently collapsed in the void. With just a shake of his body, the dozen or so bolts of lightning that emitted a heart-palpitating aura of destruction dissipated into nothingness. It was truly shocking. This, even Dongfang Wudi was shocked. Jiu Fei's physique was so strong that it could be called abnormal. Even the physique of a divine beast was no better than this. The fact that a human's body could be cultivated to such a powerful level was truly astounding. If this boy is allowed to grow up. Thinking of this, Dongfang Wudi was more murderous. Jiu Fei had unlimited potential. In the end, it was the Dongfang family who would suffer. Dongfang Wudi's determination to kill Jiu Fei became firmer. Bam! As Dongfang Wudi raised his hand, a part of the void collapsed, forming a terrible black hole, swallowing Jiu Fei. He wanted to beat Jiu Fei into the void and exile him in the void space. Even if he could not die, he would never be able to come out of the void space. This was the power of heaven and earth. Even if Jiu Fei's brute force was monstrous, it would be useless. The huge black hole was like a heavenly beast with its mouth wide open, as if to swallow the whole world. The terrible aura emanating from the black hole made Jiu Fei feel danger. He activated the inner world in his dantian, and the power of heaven and earth surged out of his dantian like a tide, shrouding him in it. Then, he waved his hands, and a big seal appeared in front of him. Boom! The power of yin and yang was like 100,000 volcanoes erupting at the same time, shaking the whole world. Jiu Fei used the yin-yang seal of life and death. The power of yin and yang was intertwined, as if evolving the Great Way. Bam! Jiu Fei held the seal and smashed it directly at the terrible black hole that was swallowing him. The yin-yang seal smashed the void, shattered the void, and disappeared at the same time as the black hole. Just at that moment, a large hand quickly arrived in front of Jiu Fei. The power of the world surged on the large hand. It was as terrifying as the hand of the heavens, giving off an aura that caused all life in the world to tremble. Damn it, this is the power of heaven and earth. Jiu Fei was shocked. Shun King in the celestial being realm was really terrifying. He could steal the power of heaven for his own use, so he did not have to worry about exhausting his primordial qi. The power of heaven and earth was unstoppable, but Ji Yufei still had to block it. Ji Yufei was incomparably powerful. His long hair danced in the wind, showing an indomitable momentum. You can attract the power of heaven and earth, I can also attract the power of heaven and earth. Let's see who is stronger and who is weaker. He took a step forward, and a powerful force surged out of his brow, dantian, and heart. These three forces, the moment Ji Yufei took a step forward, they quickly condensed on Ji Yufei's right hand. Bang! He also slapped forward with his palm. On his palm, there seemed to be a world. The three forces of heaven and earth gathered, and on Ji Yufei's palm, there seemed to be a world evolving. The power of heaven and earth surged forward. Seeing the power displayed by Ji Yufei, Dongfang Wudi could not help but be moved. He could not understand why Ji Yufei could exert such powerful power of heaven and earth. Inner world. Dongfang Wudi could not help but think of the benefits of cultivating inner world. He had only cultivated his own inner space. Even so, Ji Yufei will still die. Dongfang Wudi thought that the gap between two realms could not be made up by an inner world. Boom! The two forces of heaven and earth collided in an instant, as if two worlds were colliding. The heavenly hand that Dongfang Wudi had condensed with the power of heaven and earth immediately collapsed. The void between heaven and earth was crumbling and collapsing. The collision of the two forces of heaven and earth formed a terrible destructive force, which was enough to crush everything. Ji Yufei flew backward, and a trace of bright red blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. Dongfang Wudi, like a primordial divine mountain, stood high in the sky, motionless. It was clear who was superior. Although Ji Yufei had activated the inner world in the sea of consciousness between his eyebrows, the inner world in his dantian, and the power of the Hell Dao, it was still difficult for him to compete with the power of heaven and earth. Ji Yufei, you will die today. Since you brought me the mountain and river cauldron, I will let you die quickly, Dongfang Wudi said coldly, continuing to press toward Ji Yufei. Ha ha! You will die today. Ji Yufei suddenly laughed. What? Dongfang Wudi was shocked. At this moment, the mountain and river cauldron in his hand suddenly shook. Buzz! A deafening sound resounded through the 9 heavens. The fist-sized mountain and river cauldron burst out a terrible power that shocked the heavens, showing the supreme power to suppress the mountains and rivers on earth. How could this be? Dongfang Wudi was really shocked. The mountain and river cauldron had been suppressed by him. He had isolated all the connections between the mountain and river cauldron and the outside world with his divine sense. How could Ji Yufei still drive the mountain and river cauldron? Boom! At this moment, a mass of divine light rose from the mountain and river cauldron. In the divine light, there was a divine bead as bright as the sun. The terrible temperature burned the void and annihilated it. The next moment, a monstrous fire broke out on the divine bead, turning the area within a radius of 10 miles into a sea of fire. Wow! Chapter 876. Roar. In the sea of fire, Dongfang Wudi's heart-palpitating roar came out. The fire burned the sky, and a divine bead emitting endless fire stopped above the mountain and river cauldron, like a sun in the sky. The power of the true yang was mighty between heaven and earth. It was the phoenix marrow divine bead. The true yang divine fire burned the void, and even the air was ignited. The void was constantly collapsing and turning into nothingness. Dongfang Wudi had become a man of fire. His whole body was ignited by the true yang fire. This kind of fire was one of the most powerful flames in the world. It was the exclusive divine fire of refining weapons of the supreme path saints, and it could even smelt immortal materials. Traces of fire were constantly burning into Dongfang Wudi's body, evaporating his qi and blood, burning his body, and penetrating into his internal organs. Dongfang Wudi's body was burning inside and out. However, Dongfang Wudi was not burned to ashes by the true yang divine fire at once. Divine light gushed out of his body, trying to resist the burning of the divine fire. However, it was all in vain. Dongfang Wudi's divine power was ignited and was rapidly draining. Buzz! In the end, there was a loud sound from Dongfang Wudi's body. A golden divine bell emerged from his body, protecting him as he rushed out of the sea of fire. The true yang fire would never be extinguished. Only the supreme yin true water in the world could extinguish it. Even a little spark would burn people to ashes and destroy their body and soul. Dongfang Wudi had many secret treasures on him. The golden divine bell only lasted for a few breaths in the divine fire before it melted in the divine fire. At this time, all his clothes had turned to ashes, and his bones were burned out. His body was as black as charcoal, but he still did not die. Just a moment ago, he was high-spirited and arrogant, but now he was burned by the divine fire and almost died. He was extremely miserable. The situation had reversed so quickly that it was incredible. "Humph," I said, "you are not qualified to kill me," Ji Yufei said in a deep voice. He had long since retreated far away. The true yang flame was something that even he, who possessed an abnormally strong physique, could not endure. Even though he was standing far away, the boundless heat emitted by the true yang fire made him feel as if his entire body was on fire, and the blood in his body felt like it was about to be ignited. Even Ji Yufei was in such a state. One could imagine how badly Dongfang Wudi, whose whole body was ignited by the divine fire, had suffered. Wow! Dongfang Wudi, who rushed out of the sea of fire, roared and rushed to the black mountain in front of him, which was surging with yin qi. At the same time, another jade pendant rushed out of his body, which had been almost burned into charcoal. A vast ocean-like water elemental power surged out from the jade pendant. Countless runes appeared, as if a sea had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. The monstrous water poured down on Dongfang Wudi. However, even so, the vast and boundless power of water could not extinguish the true yang fire on Dongfang Wudi's body, and the water vapor was quickly evaporated. Soon, the endless runes dissipated in the true fire, and the jade pendant broke into pieces. The monstrous power of water disappeared in the void, as if it had never appeared. Several powerful secret treasures rushed out of Dongfang Wudi's body. He wanted to use the power of the secret treasures to extinguish the divine fire on his body, but all the secret treasures finally collapsed in the divine fire. Boom! At this time, the phoenix marrow divine bead floating over the mountain and river cauldron began to sink down, and then sank into the mountain and river cauldron. The divine fire all over the sky disappeared. Ji Yufei waved his hand, and the mountain and river cauldron flew back to him and fell into his hand. "It's not yours. Even if I give it to you, you won't be alive to enjoy it." Ji Yufei stared at the figure in front of him, who was rushing to the black mountain in the distance, and said in a deep voice. It had to be said that Dongfang Wudi was really powerful. After being burned by the divine fire for so long, he still did not die. Of course, at this time, Dongfang Wudi had been burned by the divine fire beyond recognition. His whole body was covered in flames. The divine fire, like maggots attached to the bones, had burned into his internal organs, burning his divine power and igniting his spirit. The true yang divine fire was the supreme yang fire bred by the earth, not the sun fire emitted by the sun above the sky. The true yang divine fire contained the essence of phoenix, so it could be called the phoenix divine fire. The ancient primordial divine beast phoenix was the most powerful existence in the world. Once the phoenix divine fire came out, there was nothing it could not burn. Even a supreme saint would be shocked when he encountered it. The moment he was touched by the divine fire containing the essence of phoenix, Ji Yufei already knew that Dongfang Wudi's fate was doomed. There was no suspense. He put away the mountain and river cauldron, and then chased after Dongfang Wudi unhurriedly. Finally, only a few miles away from the Black Mountain, Dongfang Wudi fell from the sky unwillingly. The true yang fire had burned his bones and evaporated all his divine power. Boom! A ball of flame fell from the sky and smashed into a thriving woodland, instantly igniting the trees in the forest, causing a towering fire. Many barbaric beasts rushed out of the forest. In the end, Dongfang Wudi's soul fluctuation gradually weakened, and then completely disappeared between heaven and earth. Shun King, who was in the celestial being realm, ended up in a miserable state, with both his body and soul destroyed. The divine fire was still burning, leaving a human-shaped ashes on the ground. Under the burning of the true yang divine fire, it was difficult for everything on Dongfang Wudi's body to be preserved. Ji Yufei came to the sky, reached out his hand, and an ancient cauldron the size of a fist appeared in his hand, floating above his palm. As soon as the ancient cauldron appeared, the sun divine fire burning on the ground immediately flew up, turned into flames, and went into the mountain and river cauldron. This black mountain. After taking back the true yang divine fire, Jiyu Fei's eyes fell on the black mountain in front of him, which was surrounded by black qi and vast yin qi. It was definitely not a coincidence that Dongfang Wudi lured him here. Was there a place of great danger ahead, or was it a trap set by Dongfang Wudi? Dongfang Wudi had been burned to ashes by the true yang fire, and no one came to answer Jiyu Fei. However, Jiyu Fei did not want to take risks. He turned around and left. Whether it was a place of danger or a trap, Dongfang Wudi was dead. Jiyu Fei did not want to rush in when he knew it was dangerous. An ancestor of the Dongfang family died. If it was outside, it would definitely cause a sensation in the cultivation world of the Tinglong continent. Jiyu Fei had pierced the sky. In the eastern land, the Dongfang family could compete with the forces of the remote antiquity. It was rumored that there was more than one ancestor in the Dongfang family who had awakened. Otherwise, the Zhao family of the remote antiquity would not be so afraid of the Dongfang family. Shun King, who was in the celestial being realm, was just like an ant in front of the powerful figures in the world. He could kill a large number of them with a casual attack. However, the Zhao family did not attack the Dongfang family. In this world abandoned by the people of the remote antiquity, the death of Shun King, who was in the celestial being realm, was not a big deal. Moreover, no one knew that it was Jiyu Fei who burned Dongfang Wudi to death with the true yang divine fire. There was no chance for a big wave to be set off. After identifying the direction, Jiyu Fei used the desolation steps and headed for the area where the passage of the ancient heaven gate was located. It was impossible for him to compete with the powerful figures in the world for the divine weapon of the Great Path. It had been a long time since he entered this abandoned world, and it was time to leave. During this trip to the remote antiquity world, Jiyu Fei had probably gained the most. Not only did he get the Phoenix Marrow Divine Bead and the Dragon Primordial Divine Bead, but he also refined his own weapon. Of course, this weapon was just a sword billet, and it was still far from being fully formed. However, even so, it had already shown power that was not weaker than the divine weapon of the powerful figures. Even the bronze divine furnace that Dongfang Wudi took out was smashed. This was a divine weapon with unlimited development potential, and it could grow into a divine weapon of the Great Path. Just as Jiyu Fei burned Dongfang Wudi to death, in a mountain, Xiaoqing, Bulon, and He Tian were stopped by someone. The person who stopped Xiaoqing and the others was a black-haired young man who showed off his ability. There was a faint divine light on the young man's body. He was a divine arts practitioner. Little guy from the Jiang family, what do you mean by this? He Tian walked forward casually and said to the young man who stopped them. The person who stopped Xiaoqing and the others was the young divine king of the Jiang family of the remote antiquity era. I didn't enjoy the battle that day, and I don't want to have any regret. The young divine king of the Jiang family ignored He Tian and looked at Xiaoqing indifferently. In his eyes, there seemed to be only Xiaoqing, and he ignored He Tian and Bulon. The young divine king of the Jiang family was very powerful. He stopped Xiaoqing and the others just to have another battle with Xiaoqing. When Xiaoqing heard this, his expression didn't change much. Just like what the young divine king of the Jiang family had said, he didn't enjoy the battle that day either. In that case, let's have another battle. Xiaoqing didn't think much and accepted the challenge of the young divine king of the Jiang family. He and the young divine king of the Jiang family weren't enemies, and there were no grudges between them. Both of them saw each other as the strongest opponent since they started cultivating. They were both well-known figures in the younger generation, promising and brilliant. They were both geniuses. When such powerful people met, there would definitely be a battle. A powerful aura immediately burst forth from the body of the young divine king of the Jiang family. It was as if a god that had been hiding in his body had awakened. Roar. A dragon's roar came faintly from the void. Xiaoqing didn't dare to be slow and circulated the power of the true dragon. An aura that wasn't any weaker than the young divine king of the Jiang family burst forth from his body, and an illusory shadow of a dragon appeared indistinctly around him. The dragon's aura was vast and mighty, and all the strange beasts in a radius of 100 miles became uneasy. Some of the wild beasts even escaped into the depths of the mountains. He Tian and Balon looked at each other and retreated. Chapter 877. Xiaoqing against the Jiang family's young divine king. This was definitely a fierce battle. He Tian and Balon both retreated far away to avoid being affected. Both of them were extremely talented, especially the young divine king of the Jiang family. He had surpassed the immortal realm and became a divine king at the first layer of the mystic transformation realm. The title of Jiang family's young divine king was not for nothing. He had this strength. As for little Qing, during this period of time, her cultivation level had also increased rather quickly. She was already a 7th or 8th firmament immortal god great demon. However, there was still quite a gap between her and the Jiang family's young divine king. The difference of a major realm was like a world apart. They could not be compared at all. However, Xiaoqing was not an ordinary great demon. He was a demon dragon that had cultivated the power of a true dragon. Just based on this point, he was enough to compete with the Jiang family's first firmament divine king. The two people were facing each other. No one made the first move. A dragon shadow faintly appeared on Xiaoqing's body. There was a faint and illusory dragon circling around him. The aura of a true dragon made the birds and beasts within a few hundred miles tremble with fear. This was an innate advantage. In ancient times, once a true dragon appeared, all beasts bowed their heads. Although it was only a trace of a true dragon's aura, it was enough to intimidate the nearby savage beasts. Meanwhile, there were stars flashing around the Jiang family's young divine king. It was as if a universe was evolving, as if it was facing another world. It gave people an incomparably oppressive feeling. When He Tian saw this scene, he could not help but be moved. The divine ability that the Jiang family's young divine king displayed seemed to be the divine ability of a ruthless person in ancient times. This divine ability has reappeared again. He Tian was very shocked. The soul fire in his skull was constantly pulsating, emitting intense soul undulations. Balon saw He Tian's strange behavior, but he did not know what happened. He could not help but be suspicious, thinking that this guy was going to play some tricks again. He Tian's temperament was very similar to old tortoises. Both of them were experts at sneak attacks and making the final decision. They were never willing to suffer losses and would always want to keep the treasures for themselves. Rumble. Just at this moment, heaven and earth trembled. The earth undulated violently like LNG. Xiaoqing and the Jiang clan's young divine king's aura rose to the peak. The dragon silhouette around Xiaoqing became even clearer. The true dragon Qi was vast and mighty, as if a supreme dragon emperor had descended. His long green hair danced wildly in the wind, and his battle intent was like a rainbow. As for the little divine king of the Jiang clan, his eyes were like two cold stars, emitting a dazzling divine light. His entire being seemed to have fused with the universe. "It's starting," He Tian said. "Who do you think is stronger?" Balon asked. The aura of the Jiang family's young divine king made his heart palpitate. A divine king at the first layer of the mystic transformation realm was too powerful. Although Balon was a peak immortal god expert at the 9th layer of the immortal god realm, he was nothing in front of the Jiang clan's young divine king. If the other party wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. He Tian didn't say anything. His attention was focused on the Jiang clan's young divine king. The other party's divine ability moved him and made him recall many things. Boom! There was a sudden tremor in the sky. A ball of sun-like divine light suddenly descended without any warning and descended towards Xiaoqing below. Boundless heat poured down from the ball of divine light, causing the void to distort from the heat. Ripples visible to the naked eye spread out. It was really like a red sun falling from the sky. This is really. At this moment, He Tian no longer had any doubts. The Jiang clan's young divine king had really cultivated the divine ability of that person from the ancient times. The divine ability of that ruthless person was famous even in the ancient times when there were many experts in the world. It was known as the strongest and most terrifying divine ability below the extreme saint realm. Once this terrifying divine ability was used, it would immediately turn the land into a barren land of 10,000 miles. All life would be cut off. Even in the current mortal world, there was still an ancient legend about this ruthless person. Swoosh! Xiaoqing took a step forward and soared into the sky. In an instant, he rushed 10 miles away and dodged the attack. His speed was so fast that it left people speechless. It was not inferior to Jiyu Fei's desolate steps. Dragon God steps. He Tian was moved again. Although he knew that Xiaoqing was the old turtle's disciple, he had been with Jiyu Fei's group for a long time. He more or less knew the old turtle's background. The old turtle was the eldest among the 9 sons of the dragon. The old turtle had the purest true dragon bloodline in the world and grasped the supreme of the dragon clan. He did not expect the old turtle to pass down this ancient dragon clan battle skill to Xiaoqing. The desolate steps was the human clan's supreme footwork and a supreme battle skill. On the other hand, the dragon god steps was the dragon clan's supreme life-slaying technique. It could also display extreme speed. Rumble, the divine radiance that looked like a red sun descended. The ground collapsed and the void collapsed. The place where Xiaoqing was standing just now immediately disappeared. The ground was collapsing and the entire area was shaking violently. Cracks that looked like abysses extended far away. It was extremely terrifying. Grand sun illuminates the sky, shatter the heavens. The Jiang clan's young divine king shouted. The descending red sun immediately flew up from the ground and chased after Xiaoqing. Wherever the red sun passed, the void turned into nothingness. It emitted a terrifying fluctuation that even shattered the heavens and earth. It truly displayed the supreme divine might that could shatter the heavens. Xiaoqing sneered. This time, he did not dodge. He directly threw out a punch. The dragon chi was vast and mighty. A huge dragon rushed out from Xiaoqing's fist. Boom! The true dragon fist force that little Qing had unleashed fiercely collided with the red sun that had chased after it, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion. Terrifying energy ripples spread out in all directions, and the void immediately collapsed. The red sun and the dragon-shaped fist energy dissipated high up in the sky. Xiaoqing flew out and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The Jiang clan's young divine king did not have it easy either. He took a dozen steps back. Every step he took caused the ground to tremble violently. The Jiang clan's young divine king was also affected. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. The first head-on clash between the two did not seem to determine who was stronger. Neither could truly suppress the other. With the power of the true dragon, Xiaoqing was able to fight against the Jiang clan's young divine king. All right. The Jiang clan's young divine king soared into the sky and arrived in front of Xiaoqing. At this moment, the vast energy ripple that descended from the sky caused the ground to shake violently. A nearby mountain peak collapsed. Again. Chapter 878. Xiaoqing punched out, the power of the true dragon surged, a huge dragon rushed out from his fist and pounced towards the Jiang family's young divine king. It was like a real divine dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, causing people's hearts to palpitate. At the same time, he used Dragon God Step and rushed towards the Jiang family's young divine king with extreme speed. The demon race has an incomparably powerful physique, their physical body is incomparably tyrannical. Close combat is also an advantage for the demon race. The physical body of humans is absolutely incomparable to the demon race. This is the innate talent of the demon race. However, the human race has a path of martial Tao. The martial body of a martial artist is even stronger than the physical body of the demon race. The physical body of a martial artist who has cultivated the indestructible martial body is so powerful that even the almighty demon race would be stunned. The Jiang family's young divine king naturally knows how powerful it is. He didn't move and directly retreated. Sun rises from the east. The Jiang family's young divine king roared and displayed his supreme divine ability. He actually attracted a ball of sun-like divine light from the east. The temperature of the entire world rose rapidly. Boom! The sun that was guided by the Jiang family's young divine king met the true dragon fist force in front of it. Everywhere it passed, everything was destroyed. Without any suspense, the dragon shadow fist force collided with the blazing sun. The heaven and earth shook violently, the blazing sun exploded and the dragon shadow dissipated. The energy that emitted an endless aura of destruction swept out in all directions. Even the clouds in the sky were dispersed. The mighty remnant power that descended from the sky caused the earth to tremble, the mountain ridges to crumble and dust to rise high into the sky. It was as terrifying as the end of the world. When He Tian and Bulon saw this scene, they were incomparably shocked. If they were to fight against the Jiang family's young divine king, they would have long been defeated. The Jiang family's young divine king was really too strong. Only Xiaoqing, who possessed the power of the true dragon, could fight endlessly with him and challenge this young divine king. Swish! At this time, Xiaoqing used dragon god steps and successfully approached the Jiang family's little divine king. His right leg directly swept towards the Jiang family's little divine king's waist. Like a divine whip, even the void shattered under his feet. With the power of a true dragon, Xiaoqing's strength was extremely strong. With a raise of his hand, he could shatter the sky, and with a stomp, he could shatter the earth. Every move he made contained great power. Bam! The Jiang family's young divine king blocked Xiaoqing's attack with his knee. Then, the Jiang family's young divine king chopped at Xiaoqing's neck with his hand. Divine light burst forth from the Jiang family's young divine king's hand. His palm was like a peerless divine weapon that tore through the void. What? He Tian and Bulon were shocked. Not only did the Jiang family's young divine king cultivate a terrifying divine ability, his physical body was also so powerful that it could contend against Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing was also secretly shocked. The battle strength displayed by the Jiang family's young divine king made him feel a dangerous aura. He dodged the Jiang family's young divine king's hand blade, then directly punched towards the Jiang family's young divine king's chest. The true dragon fist surged forward like a surging river. The Jiang family's young divine king also pressed his palm forward. On his palm, divine power was vast and mighty. His palm blossomed with resplendent divine light, as if a sun was going to rush out from his palm. Boom! Xiaoqing's fist and the Jiang family's young divine king's palm collided fiercely, and a muffled sound that was like a muffled thunder exploded. The sleeves on their arms were immediately shattered by the power that came from their hands, turning into pieces of cloth that fluttered in the void. Xiaoqing and the Jiang family's young divine king's movements paused for a moment. In the next moment, the two of them flew back at the same time. Fresh red blood seeped out of their mouths again. He has refined the power of the divine ability into his flesh and blood, fusing the divine ability with his body. No wonder his physique is so strong. He Tian was experienced and knowledgeable, so he quickly saw through the background of the Jiang family's young divine king. Roar! Roar! Xiaoqing and the Jiang family's young divine king roared at the same time, then they pounced towards each other at the same time. 10 suns illuminate the clear sky. The Jiang family's young divine king shouted loudly. His entire body emitted resplendent divine light. He displayed his strongest divine ability. 10 sun-like divine lights rushed out from his body and soared into the sky. Rumble! It was as if 10 suns appeared in the sky and scorched the heaven and earth. The divine light in the sky made people unable to open their eyes. The power of the sun was vast and mighty. It was as if the heaven and earth were about to collapse. 10 suns illuminate the clear sky. It's actually the 10 suns illuminate the clear sky. The ancient supreme divine ability, 10 suns illuminate the clear sky, has reappeared once again. He Tian saw this scene and seemed to be stunned as he muttered to himself. Bulon saw this shocking scene and was also speechless for a long time. Once the 10 suns illuminate the clear sky divine ability was used, the land was scarlet for thousands of miles. This was not a lie. The flowers and trees within 100 miles were all rapidly withering. It was as if their vitality was evaporated by the 10 suns in the sky. Bang! Xiaoqing was directly sent flying. He spat out a large mouthful of blood. The power of the 10 suns was too powerful. It was simply unstoppable and couldn't be contended against. After being sent flying dozens of miles away, Xiaoqing stabilized his body. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a divine pearl. This was the dragon pearl that he had cultivated, and it contained the power of a true dragon. Once the dragon pearl appeared, the power of a true dragon surged and directly blocked the power of the 10 suns that were descending from the sky. The divine light emitted from the dragon pearl could actually compete with the brilliance of the 10 suns in the sky. The dragon pearl floated above Xiaoqing's head. The power of a true dragon descended mightily and enveloped him. He guided the power of a true dragon in the dragon pearl to gather in his hands. Dragon King Fist. Xiaoqing's long hair danced wildly. His body emitted a shocking aura. He raised his head and looked straight at the 10 suns in the sky. Then, he punched upwards with both fists. He displayed an indomitable aura. His 2 fists were like 2 moving ancient divine mountains. The vast power that spread from his fists pierced through the sky. The 10 suns that were descending were immediately blocked by the terrifying fist energy. Bam! 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 4 of the 10 suns exploded. The monstrous divine fire of the sun enveloped the sky. The divine power of the sun was vast and mighty. The earth was collapsing, the mountains were collapsing, and the heaven and earth seemed like it was going to collapse. It was extremely terrifying. According to an ancient legend, in the ancient times, 10 suns suddenly appeared in the sky and scorched the earth. The common people were on the brink of extinction. At that time, a supreme deity made a move and shot down 9 suns to save the common people. This legend was talking about the supreme divine power of the 10 suns illuminating the clear sky. In the ancient times, that ruthless person had once used this supreme divine ability to cleanly slaughter a powerful ancient race. Under the 10 suns illuminating the clear sky, thousands of miles of land had been turned into scorched earth. This divine power of the Jiang family's young divine king was still 108,000 miles away from the great accomplishment realm. Xiaoqing gathered the power of a true dragon in his fists and attacked. He actually broke 4 of the 10 suns in an instant. Chapter 879. Raw. His clothes were stained with blood, but the young divine king of the Jiang family was not depressed. Instead, he was full of fighting spirit. The light in his eyes became stronger, and his gaze shot out like 2 cold lightning bolts. 10 suns illuminate the clear sky. He roared, and endless divine light rushed out of his body again. The world suddenly changed, and a clear sky appeared in the sky, as if a universe was evolving. A part of the blue sky descended, and above the blue sky, 10 suns reappeared. They emitted an endless divine power of the sun, crushing the void and shattering everything. It was as if 10 real suns were falling from the sky, and it was terrifying to the extreme. This kind of magical phenomenon had already shocked the untainted land in the immemorial age. That ruthless person had once used this magical power to annihilate an incomparably powerful race in the immemorial age. Now, someone had actually cultivated this magical power, which really shocked He Tian. This young divine king of the Jiang family had unlimited potential, and he had some of the heroic bearing of that ruthless person in the past. The clear sky descended, and the 10 suns illuminated the sky, shattering the world. Xiaoqing was the first to bear the brunt, and he felt a great pressure. The energy wave from the sky was really too strong, and it made him feel that it was difficult to resist. The boundless divine power of the sun from the 10 suns caused the earth to start turning into a magma-like existence. Once the 10 suns appeared, the land would be scarlet for thousands of miles. This was definitely not an exaggeration. Even though Xiaoqing had the dragon pearl of life floating above his head, and he was protected by the power of the true dragon, he still felt great danger. The void was sealed by the supreme magical power of the young divine king of the Jiang family, and he could not retreat even if he wanted to. If he could not retreat, then he would fight. Raw. You have the 10 suns illuminate the clear sky, and I have the 10 dragons devour the sky. Xiaoqing roared angrily, and the dragon power in his body surged. Many faint and illusory dragons appeared around him. Every dragon was thousands of meters long, and they roared silently. Then, they soared from around Xiaoqing at the same time, and entered the dragon pearl of life above Xiaoqing's head. Roar. A dragon roar shook the 9 heavens. In the next moment, the dragon pearl emitted a mighty aura of the true dragon, and 10 dragons that looked like true dragons rushed out of the dragon pearl. This is, the mighty power of the true dragon spread out from the dragon pearl, shaking the descending blue sky. The 10 suns fixed in the blue sky also shook. The 10 great dragons that rushed out of the dragon pearl seemed to have condensed into bodies of flesh and blood. Every scale and every whisker was extremely clear, as if they were not illusions at all. 10 dragons devouring the heavens, break! Xiaoqing shouted. He drove the dragon pearl with all his might, and the power of the true dragon erupted. The aura of the true dragon was unprecedentedly strong, as if 10 true dragons had appeared in this part of the sky. Roar! The 10 dragons roared and soared into the sky. Every single dragon exuded the aura of a true dragon. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they charged at the 10 suns in the sky. The entire blue sky shook violently, showing signs of collapsing. He Tian and Bulon, who had already retreated far away, were incredibly shocked when they saw this. This wasn't the 10 dragons vying for pearls, but the 10 dragons vying for Sunday, damn it. The Jiang family's young divine king also didn't expect that Xiaoqing was actually so powerful. The strength that Xiaoqing displayed had already exceeded his expectations. At this moment, there was no time for him to think anymore. The Jiang family's young divine king made up his mind and unleashed the might of the 10 suns illuminating the blue sky without holding back. The blue sky descended, the 10 suns fell, the entire heaven and earth was about to shatter. Boom! 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 There were 10 consecutive loud noises. The 10 true dragons collided with the 10 suns. In that instant, the heaven and earth were penetrated by this kind of power. A part of the void instantly collapsed. In front of the 2 ultimate moves, the void was as fragile as a thin piece of paper. It was silently annihilated and turned into nothingness. A huge black hole appeared between the heaven and earth. The mighty remaining might shook the entire earth. Mountains collapsed continuously, dust rose high into the sky, and the cracks that appeared were like bottomless abysses. The power of the 10 dragons and 10 suns caused the void within a radius of 12 miles to shatter, forming a super black hole. Behind the black hole was endless nothingness. If one was struck into the nothingness, they would most likely be lost in the nothingness and never be able to walk out. A human figure fell from the sky, directly smashing into the ground. The earth trembled, and then collapsed, forming a bottomless pit. The other figure was sent flying into the sky. A large amount of blood sprinkled down from the sky. That was the blood of an immortal god. It contained traces of divine power and was crystal clear like agate. The 10 suns illuminating the blue sky divine ability phenomenon disappeared. The 10 dragons also disappeared. In the heaven and earth, there were no 10 suns nor dragons. There was only a super huge hole. The void of the heaven and earth was pierced through, and it was a super huge hole. Terrifying energy swept out in all directions. The super huge hole was still gradually expanding. Even He Tian and Bulon who were far away had no choice but to retreat. Both sides are injured. Brother Qing, are you all right? Bulon and He Tian directly retreated to 100 miles away before stopping. Everything within a radius of 12 miles had been flattened. The mountains had collapsed, and large tracts of trees had turned into dust. A desert that spanned 12 miles had appeared in the mountains. This is bad. Seeing this scene, He Tian and Bulon secretly complained. Xiaoqing was the only disciple of Old Tortoise and also Jiu Fei's brother. If something were to happen to him, they would not be able to bear the consequences. He Tian and Bulon couldn't help but change their expressions at the thought of this. Brother Qing, I hope nothing happens to you. Although He Tian was covered from head to toe in black clothes, the soul fire in his head could still be seen. Even Bulon was a little flustered. After the huge hole in the sky expanded to its limit, it began to shrink. The power of heaven and earth began to repair the shattered void. The hole in the sky was also shrinking. Bam! Just as He Tian and Bulon were about to rush over to search for Xiaoqing, the sand in the center of the desert suddenly exploded, and a figure rushed out from the ground. That's, He Tian and Bulon immediately stopped in their tracks. Their hearts trembled. They sensed an incomparably familiar aura from that person, and they couldn't help but be overjoyed. Brother Qing, young master. He Tian and Balon were stunned for a moment before they immediately rushed over to the figure that rushed out from the ground. That person's hair was disheveled, and his body was covered in blood. It was Xiaoqing. Right at that moment, another aura descended from the sky. The Jiang family's young divine king? In the battle between Xiaoqing and the Jiang family's young divine king, no one was able to suppress the other. Such an ending seemed reasonable, but it was beyond everyone's expectations. One had to know that the Jiang family's young divine king was a first firmament divine king of the profound transformation realm. He was a major realm higher than Xiaoqing, but he fought to a draw with Xiaoqing. It could only be said that Xiaoqing's talent was too abnormal. He actually cultivated the true dragon power. Xiaoqing, who controlled the true dragon power, could multiply his battle prowess after using the Destiny Dragon Pearl. It was enough to challenge an immortal king or divine king of the profound transformation realm. The Jiang family's young divine king didn't fall from the sky. He Tian and the rest felt the aura of the Jiang family's young divine king quickly go far away, and finally disappeared between heaven and earth. At this moment, a few powerful auras suddenly appeared in the distance. Some people were rapidly approaching. The battle between Xiaoqing and the Jiang family's young divine king still alarmed some people. Let's go. Without any hesitation, He Tian directly used the teleportation formation platform. Then, he rushed up with Xiaoqing and Balon, activated the formation platform, and directly teleported away. Very soon, the figures of the extreme Tao appeared nearby. Could it be that there is actually a profound transformation realm immortal king or divine king fighting here? Even the void of heaven and earth was penetrated. Too scary. When they saw the desert in front of them and the gradually shrinking space of nothingness above the desert, everyone was stunned. At this moment, Xiaoqing, He Tian, Balon, and the rest had long been teleported thousands of miles away by the teleportation formation platform. Using the power of the teleportation formation platform to teleport, perhaps only the current almighties could use their supreme magic power to sense the fluctuation of the void of heaven and earth to track Xiaoqing and the rest. There was a limit to the time that the various ancient desolate forces could enter the ancient desolation world. No one could stay here forever. At this moment, many people who didn't die in this pseudo-heaven realm began to gradually gather near the passage where the gate of heaven was located. The ancient desolate forces began to withdraw. Although Xiaoqing suffered a great impact in the battle with the Jiang family's young divine king, his physical body and divine soul were both injured, and it was absolutely impossible for him to recover in a short period of time. However, they didn't stop and directly rushed towards the passage where the ancient heaven gate was located. They didn't want to be trapped in this pseudo-heaven realm that was filled with murderous intent. They also knew that at this moment, Ji Yufei would definitely also head towards the passage to this pseudo-heaven realm. In reality, just like what Xiaoqing and the rest thought, Ji Yufei was hurrying on his way. No one wanted to stay in a world that was filled with danger. However, there were people who didn't want Ji Yufei to leave. In a valley, 3 immortal kings and divine kings in the mysterious transformation realm intercepted Ji Yufei. The 3 divine kings and the immortal kings came from 3 different forces. The 3 divine kings and the immortal kings blocked Ji Yufei in the valley. They had long since been prepared, accurately calculating the path that Ji Yufei would definitely take, so they stood guard nearby. When Ji Yufei flew over the valley, they suddenly launched an attack, activating the Grand Formation and drawing out a peerless killing light, wanting to kill Ji Yufei in an instant. Zhao family, Dongfang family, Beitang family. Ji Yufei landed on a huge rock in the valley and his eyes swept across the 3 powerful figures that were standing in 3 different directions in the sky like lightning. Chapter 880. The 3 celestial kings and divine kings trapped Ji Yufei in a valley. This was a trap they had set up long ago. Ji Yufei, today is the anniversary of your death. An celestial king came from the east. This celestial king was shrouded in celestial light, and behind his head was a 5-colored divine light. Power of the 5 elements. Ji Yufei's pupils shrank when he saw this celestial king. This was the 5 elements celestial art of the Beitang clan. This celestial king came from the Baitang clan. These cultivation clans that had been passed down for thousands of years or even longer on the Tenglong continent were not simple. They all had deep foundations that made people's hearts palpitate. Killing him like this is letting him off easy. A divine king came from the south. 18 nine-colored divine lights circled around his body. His powerful aura made people almost breathless. A member of the Zhao clan, Ji Yufei, sensed an aura similar to Zhao Wuji's from this god king. That Zhao Wuji was too narrow-minded. Ji Yufei thought that Zhao Wuji wanted to borrow the hands of his family's experts to take revenge for his defeat that day. Ji Yufei's evaluation of Zhao Wuji was only these 4 words. This brat killed the most outstanding descendant of my clan. Killing him like this is letting him off easy. I want to extract his soul and suppress it for 10,000 years. I want him to suffer the pain of refining his soul. And Celestial King came from the north with a murderous aura. He wanted to skin Ji Yufei alive. People of the Dongfang clan, Ji Yufei said to himself expressionlessly. There was nothing more to say. The people who came had great enmity with him. Today was going to be a situation of certain death. Either they would die, or he would die. Ji Yufei knew that the enmity between him and the 3 clans could no longer be resolved. For me. You seem to think that you have me. Ji Yufei sneered. So what if he had fallen into the trap of these people? He had a saint weapon in his hands. Even the 10-direction annihilation trap could do nothing to him. Could it be that these 2 great celestial kings and a divine king were able to lay a trap that could kill him? Even more powerful than 10-direction annihilation? Ji Yufei could not help but shake his head. You are nothing more than a mere martial immortal. Could it be that you actually think you can contend against us? The immortal king from the east said in a very disdainful manner. Why are you talking so much to him? Just kill him. The divine king of the south said impatiently. Then let's send him on his way, the Dongfang family's celestial king said. Afterwards, 2 immortal kings and a god king approached Ji Yufei from 3 directions at the same time. At the same time, they activated their killing formations. Runes appeared on the ground, triggering the power of the world to seal the entire valley. Bolts of purple lightning began to appear in the sky above the valley. 8 gates, heaven sealing chaos. Formation, rise. A flag plate appeared in the hands of the Baitang family's celestial king. There were 8 small flags on it. Following his voice, the 8 small flags on the flag plate flew up and quickly enlarged. Then, they were inserted in 8 directions around the valley. When the formation flags fell, the entire formation was completely activated. Rumble, the entire valley was shrouded in smoke and clouds that surged from all directions. Bolts of purple lightning flickered in the smoke and clouds, emitting blinding light. Ji Yufei stood on a huge rock in the valley. He only felt boundless pressure descend from the sky. It was as if the sky was pressing down on him. Swoosh. With a thought, Ji Yufei triggered the power of the world in his dantian. Immediately, the power of the world sealed the void around him. His aura instantly disappeared completely. This, the 2 immortal kings and a god king were incomparably shocked. They realized that they could not sense Ji Yufei's aura. Even though they saw Ji Yufei standing in front of them, they thought they were seeing things. Although Ji Yufei's internal power of the world had isolated the terrifying aura emitted by the formation, it did not mean that there was no danger. Boom! In the sky, there was a sudden clap of thunder. A bolt of purple lightning the size of a mountain bombarded down from the sky. The aura of destruction was vast and mighty between heaven and earth. The lightning directly tore the void and bombarded towards Ji Yufei's head. No one knew when a black iron rod less than 4 feet long appeared in Ji Yufei's hand. Facing the terrifying lightning, he did not dodge. He directly held the iron rod and bombarded upwards. Buzz! The black iron rod cut through the void and let out a deafening sound. The entire heaven and earth shook under the black iron rod. It was as if Ji Yufei was swinging a huge mountain. Boom! Under the astonished gazes of the 2 immortal kings and 1 divine king, Ji Yufei actually shattered the mountain-like purple lightning with a single strike of his rod. How is this possible? How can he have such a powerful combat strength? Using martial arts to become an immortal. Could the legend be true? The two immortal kings and a god king were all shocked. Ji Yufei's combat strength made their hearts palpitate. If he was allowed to grow, the three major families would be in big trouble. We can't let him grow. No matter what, we must kill him today. The two immortal kings and a god king made up their minds. They all felt threatened and wanted to completely eliminate this threat at all costs. 8 gates heaven ceiling, you can't escape. Just accept your death. The immortal king of the Beitang family said in a deep voice. He sat cross-legged in the sky and operated the formation. Terrifying purple lightning constantly fell from the sky and bombarded towards Ji Yufei. The whole valley almost turned into a sea of lightning. The purple lightning wreaked havoc. Anything that was swept by the lightning was immediately turned into dust. However, these lightning couldn't do anything to Ji Yufei. He waved the black iron rod and smashed the purple lightning one after another. Even if he was bombarded by 1 or 2 lightning bolts, it would not cause him any harm. Seeing this scene, the immortal king of the Beitang family, the immortal king of the Dongfang family, and the god king of the Zhao family were all dumbfounded. The strength of Ji Yufei's body made their hearts palpitate. Even they didn't dare to resist this kind of lightning with their body, but Ji Yufei could resist the heaven and earth lightning with his body. Humph! Let's see how long you can last. The immortal king of the Beitang family immediately changed the formation. The ground immediately shook and endless earth chi was guided out. The ground seemed to come to life. Endless soil surged towards Ji Yufei from all directions. At the same time, the ground under Ji Yufei's feet suddenly collapsed and swallowed Ji Yufei into the ground. Chapter 881. The 8 gates heaven ceiling killing array displayed its terrifying power, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth, evolving into all kinds of killing techniques, completely obliterating the people trapped in the array. The killing array was activated, and the entire valley seemed to have turned into a huge millstone, beginning to obliterate everything. The entire sky was pressing down. The endless power of heaven and earth aroused the power of the earth. The entire ground, the power of the earth surged violently, rushing up from the depths of the earth. Rumble, the earth trembled, as if there were countless dragons rolling underground. The soil, sand, and stones, everything was obliterated into dust, setting off a shocking wave on the ground. He's still not dead. The immortal king of the Beitang family, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, revealed a trace of a smile on his face. This killing array was one of the most precious treasures of the Beitang family, and it would not be used easily. It was the foundation of the Beitang family. However, in order to kill Ji Yufei, this immortal king of the Beitang family did not hesitate to use this killing array. The immortal king of the Dongfang family and the divine king of the Zhao family secretly nodded. This killing array was indeed powerful. The Beitang family was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Even if it was an immortal king or a divine king trapped in this array, they would only end up dead. However, just when they thought that Ji Yufei was dead for sure, a black iron rod suddenly flew out from nowhere, directly smashing the array plate in the hand of the immortal king of the Beitang family, and also smashing the right hand of the immortal king that was holding the array plate. The immortal king of the Beitang family immediately soared into the sky and dodged, otherwise, that black iron rod would have smashed his body. The sudden change made the other 2 divine kings and the immortal king dumbfounded on the spot. Roar! The immortal king of the Beitang family roared at the sky, his black hair stood up. He was so angry that he was actually injured by a kid from the younger generation. The immortal king's power was vast and mighty. A 5-colored light enveloped the immortal king of the Beitang family. The flesh and bones of the injured wrist were growing rapidly, and in just an instant, the right hand of the immortal king of the Beitang family was completely healed, as if it had never been injured. After the black iron rod smashed the palm of the immortal king of the Beitang family, it flew back. On the ground, an arm stretched out and grabbed the black iron rod. That kid is not dead yet. The 3 experts of the profound transformation realm were all moved. None of them had expected that even the energy of the earth would not be able to destroy Ji Yufei. One must know that Ji Yufei was merely an immortal-level martial immortal. A profound transformation realm immortal king and an immortal level immortal king were simply incomparable. A casual attack from an immortal king could annihilate a large number of immortal divinities. This was the strength of an immortal king, an insurmountable gap. However, Ji Yufei's performance had exceeded the understanding of the three profound transformation realm super experts. Ji Yufei, who was only in the celestial realm, was actually able to survive the terrifying killing formation controlled by the celestial king. In the eyes of others, this was a miracle in itself. Rumble, a whirlpool suddenly appeared on the ground. Endless earth energy gathered from all directions and was continuously swallowed by the whirlpool. What's going on? What's going on? The immortal king of the Dongfang family and the divine king of the primordial era's Zhao family had no idea what was going on. They could sense that the earth energy was rapidly weakening. The entire killing formation started trembling. A terrifying aura emerged from the depths of the earth. Although this aura was not very powerful, it caused the immortal kings and divine kings to be startled. The earth was sinking. The earth energy drawn by the 8 gates heavenly sealing slaughter formation was being swallowed by the whirlpool non-stop. Soon, all of the earth energy was devoured. 3,000 jong of the ground of the entire valley was shaved off. The whirlpool disappeared and a human figure appeared. That person's black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were like cold stars and he held a black iron rod in his hand. Who else could it be but Ji Yufei? Humph humph. These fools, they actually wanted to use the earth energy to deal with me. Little did they know that I would be able to take advantage of them. Ji Yufei thought. How could this be? This time, even the immortal king of the Beitang family who laid down the 8 gates heavenly sealing slaughter formation was dumbfounded. Ji Yufei had a treasure that could suppress the earth energy. The immortal king of the Beitang family was right. Ji Yufei indeed had a treasure that could suppress the earth energy. Moreover, it was a saint tool of the extreme Tao. The mountain and river cauldron could suppress the mountains and rivers of the earth. It was the natural nemesis of the earth energy. The endless earth energy drawn by the 8 gates heavenly sealing slaughter formation was devoured by the mountain and river cauldron. Boom! Suddenly, the sky shook violently. 5-colored light flashed and the power of the 5 elements surged. A 5-colored immortal wheel appeared behind the head of the immortal king of the Beitang family and flew up. As the 5 elements rotated, the 5-colored deity wheel expanded rapidly, emitting boundless 5 elements deity force. Like a mountain, it pressed down on Ji Yufei. The 5 elements immortal king of the Beitang family made his move. The 5 elements immortal wheel emitted an extremely terrifying energy wave that shattered the void. The power of destruction swept down on Ji Yufei. The Dongfang family's immortal king and the primordial era's Zhao family's divine king did not attack. For an immortal king to attack an immortal god-level martial immortal was already akin to the strong bullying the weak. If they were to join hands and attack an immortal god-level martial immortal, it would truly be too humiliating. Those who could become immortal kings and divine kings all had their own pride. Ji Yufei's expression did not change in the face of the killing move. He soared into the sky and met the 5 elements immortal wheel. At the same time, he swung the black iron rod in his hand and smashed it at the 5 elements immortal wheel. Has he gone mad? Is he stupid? The immortal king of the Dongfang family and the divine king of the Zhao family were shocked. They did not expect Ji Yufei to fight the 5 elements immortal king head-on. Boom! The black iron rod broke through the power of the 5 elements and directly collided with the 5 elements deity wheel, making a loud noise. Under the shocked gazes of the 2 experts of the mysterious transformation realm, the 5 elements deity wheel was sent flying. How is this possible? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The immortal king of the Dongfang family and the divine king of the Zhao family were dumbfounded again. They could not believe that Ji Yufei had sent the 5 elements immortal wheel flying with one strike. The 5 elements celestial wheel was an imperial divine weapon refined by the 5 elements celestial king. However, it had been sent flying by an inconspicuous black iron rod. The most shocked person was the owner of the 5 elements immortal wheel, the 5 elements immortal king of the Beitang family. He was also shocked when his imperial divine weapon was sent flying. Ji Yufei, on the other hand, fell from the sky. He possessed an abnormally strong physique, so he did not suffer any damage from the violent impact. The body of a martial artist was so strong that it could resist an imperial divine weapon. The legend was true. A martial artist who was successful in cultivation had the strongest martial body in the world. They could not let Ji Yufei live. Chapter 882. You are currently reading the Indestructible Martial Sovereign Scripture, Chapter 885. Devouring the heavens and earth. Golden Gourd. Ji Yufei's divine strength was monstrous, and his immortal god martial physique was so strong that even immortal kings and god kings at the profound transformation realm would pale in fright. He actually used brute force to fight against a king divine weapon. Boom! Ji Yufei was shaken down by the power of the 5 elements from the deity wheel of 5 elements. He crushed a part of the ground and sent dust flying. He looked up with unparalleled fighting spirit. His body was surging with a vast qi of yin and yang. This was not Dharma power or supernatural powers, but the most basic power of humanity. The immortal path and the divine path were both human paths. Ji Yufei cultivated the human path, the great path of humanity. He stimulated the most basic power in his body and became a saint with his invincible body. After a series of battles, he felt that his cultivation had reached a bottleneck. He could break through at any time. On the road of martial arts, fighting was the most direct way to improve one's strength. Under the full force of his qi and qi, Ji Yufei's body gradually changed. His dantian, the center of his eyebrows, and the 365 important acupoints of his body. Even his internal organs and bones were constantly being nourished by qi and qi. His spine was like a dragon, from which strands of qi spread to the bones of his body. The yin and yang qi was everywhere in Ji Yufei's body. His flesh and blood, his bones, his organs, from the inside to the outside, his skin to the ends of his hair, it was everywhere. With a raise of a hand, a kick, or even a thought from Ji Yufei, he could instantly mobilize the power in his body and direct it to a certain part without any hindrance. At this stage of the road of martial arts, the inside of the body was a world of its own. One could use all kinds of martial arts and battle techniques, and even draw the power of heaven and earth for one's own use. It wasn't just the immortal Tao and divine Tao that could control the power of heaven and earth and draw upon the divine might of the great Tao. When one cultivated the martial Tao to a high level, it could also give rise to all kinds of martial Tao divine abilities. Fight. What I need now is a life and death battle, and these 3 fellows will become my stepping stones. Ji Yufei's gaze was as sharp as the edge of a blade as he swept his gaze over the 3 profound transformation realm super experts in the sky. Dongfang family, Beitang family, and desolate ancient Zhao family. If you want to kill me, then you better be prepared to face my wrath. Ji Yufei thought. He was fearless. So what if it was a cultivation clan? So what if it was an ancient power? They were nothing more than whetstones for him. Ji Yufei's battle intent surged like a rainbow as he soared into the sky. One hand covers the sky. With a loud roar, he took the initiative to launch a palm strike at the 5 elements immortal king of the Beitang family. Boom! The entire heaven and earth was shaken by Ji Yufei's strength. Ji Yufei's palm force was like a torrential river, gushing towards the 5 elements immortal king. A golden divine light appeared in front of his palm. Yin and yang transformed into the 5 elements. Ji Yufei's yin and yang yuan qi could transform the 5 elements qi into 5-element battle skills. The power of extreme yang could shake the heavens and earth. In front of his palm, a golden ocean seemed to appear, blocking out the sky. Everyone was taken aback. Ji Yufei could actually activate the power of the metal element. This was really surprising. The path of martial arts was indeed not simple. Legend had it that in ancient times, the martial ancestor created the ancient martial arts. It was a cultivation method that could compete with the supreme Tao ancestor, the supreme God ancestor, and the demon race. However, the path of martial arts was the most difficult of all cultivation methods. It was also the most difficult method to achieve success in cultivation. Even in the Great Desolation era, which was filled with experts in ancient times, there were not many warriors who had truly achieved success in cultivation. However, Every martial artist who succeeded in cultivating it was a terrifying existence. The indestructible martial body was even stronger than the innate physique of the innate gods and demons. Martial artists who succeeded in cultivating the indestructible martial body could go to the 9 heavens and capture the 9 heavens phoenix. They could go to the 4 seas and capture the 4 seas true dragon. They could travel unhindered in the untainted Great Era. It was difficult to prove one's way with strength. Therefore, over the years, the path of martial arts gradually declined until it disappeared from the cultivation world. True martial artists were extinct. The appearance of Jiu Fei was a coincidence and an accident. He obtained the inheritance of the martial ancestor and became a martial immortal. He was probably the only martial artist to become a martial immortal in thousands of years. Bang! The 5 elements deity wheel emitted endless power of the 5 elements. It fell from the sky. On the deity wheel, the 5 elements rotated, as if a 5 elements world was evolving. Rumble. The power of the 5 elements collided with the power of Jiu Fei's palm. It was as if 2 worlds were colliding. The whole world was about to collapse, as if doomsday had come. These 2 forces were too powerful. In the end, cracks that looked like black lightning appeared in the void. The 5 elements deity wheel that was descending from the sky was blocked by Jiu Fei and could not come down. The powerful impact from the sky was withstood by Jiu Fei's strong body. The clothes on Jiu Fei's upper body turned into dust in an instant. Jiu Fei's bronze skin was full of power. Every muscle, every inch of his bones contained unimaginable power. It made people feel a strong sense of oppression. Above him, there was a flash of divine light. It made Jiu Fei look like he was cast with divine iron. He slashed the immortal king with his palm and then used the 8 desolation steps. With the speed of 8 steps, he appeared in the sky above the divine king of the Zhao family. Without any hesitation or reservation, Jiu Fei took the first step of the 8 kill steps. A terrifying power surged under his feet. It was as if there were lightning flashing under his feet. This step of Jiu Fei caused the void to collapse. Fighting in close combat with a martial artist was the nightmare of all cultivators. No one wanted to be close to a martial artist, not even a divine king. When Jiu Fei appeared above his head, the divine king of the Zhao family's expression changed immediately. Jiu Fei's foot landed. The divine king of the Zhao family immediately felt a great pressure. It was as if an ancient divine mountain had suddenly appeared above his head and was falling down on him. The powerful pressure made it hard for him to breathe. No one could remain calm in the face of a martial artist with unparalleled combat strength and monstrous divine power. Jiu Fei's speed was too fast. The divine king of the Zhao family had no time to dodge. He could only raise his right hand to block Jiu Fei's foot. The power of the divine way surged from the divine king of the Zhao family's arm. His arm seemed to have transformed into a divine sword. It shot out boundless chaotic sword light, tearing through the void and piercing through heaven and earth as it flew toward Jiu Fei. The sound of metal clanging rang out incessantly. The sword light that shot out from the divine king of the Zhao family's arm was like a peerless divine sword. It made one's heart palpitate. However, Jiu Fei's divine power was limitless. His physical body was so tough that it could be said to be invincible. The combination of his powerful martial body and martial arts battle skills was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The 8 kill steps displayed great power. Streaks of chaotic sword light shattered under Jiu Fei's feet. They could not stop his foot at all. Bam! Catcher! Jiu Fei's foot landed heavily on the divine king of the Zhao family's arm. The bone-chilling sound of bone shattering rang out. The divine king of the Zhao family's right arm was bent out of shape by Jiu Fei's foot. The bone pierced through his sleeve and came out. Divine king blood splattered everywhere. The divine king of the Zhao family did not panic. He retreated with all his might. He knew that Jiu Fei had already locked onto his aura. Jiu Fei's attack would come at him like a tidal wave. In reality, it was just as the divine king of the Zhao family thought. Jiu Fei was about to follow up with the second step of the 8 kill steps. He wanted to crush the divine king of the Zhao family under his feet. However, at this moment, the immortal king of the Dongfang family finally made his move. A golden gourd rushed out of his body and floated above his head. The mouth of the gourd produced a heaven-devouring power that swallowed the heavens and swallowed Ji Yufei. Whoosh! The golden light surged. Ji Yufei's body stopped. He was actually pulled back by a powerful force toward the golden gourd floating above the immortal king of the Dongfang family. Retract! The immortal king of the Dongfang family shouted. He used all his strength to activate the golden gourd. The golden gourd vibrated continuously and endless golden light surged in the mouth of the gourd. Ji Yufei's body quickly shrank and flew toward the mouth of the gourd. However, just as Ji Yufei was about to be sucked into the golden gourd, he suddenly stretched out his limbs and supported himself on the mouth of the gourd. He used all his strength to resist the suction of the golden gourd. No way! The divine king of the Zhao family and the immortal king of the Beitang family saw this scene and their eyes almost fell out. This was too unbelievable. Ji Yufei was actually supporting himself on the mouth of the gourd. At this time, the severely bent arm of the divine king of the Zhao family that was crushed by Ji Yufei's foot had already recovered. The broken bones and necrotic flesh were all regenerated. The immortal king of the Beitang family also put away the 5 elements immortal wheel and walked over. Roar! Ji Yufei roared again and again, using all his strength to resist the devouring power of the golden gourd. His body bloomed with dazzling divine light, which was formed by the boiling yuan qi in Ji Yufei's body. Humph! It's just a last-ditch struggle. The immortal king of the Dongfang family sneered and then used all his strength to activate the power of the golden gourd. Rumble! The entire void in front of the golden gourd trembled. Golden light surged from the mouth of the gourd and wrapped around Ji Yufei. The void in front of Ji Yufei was sucked in by the terrifying devouring power of the gourd. Whoa! All the muscles and bones in Ji Yufei's body were shaking, as if his body was about to be torn apart. If he didn't have a powerful martial body, he would have been swallowed into the golden gourd. This golden gourd was definitely a treasure. It seemed to be a bit stronger than the Emperor Divine weapon refined by the immortal Emperor of the Celestial Being Realm and the Shun King. In the end, the void of the world was swallowed into the golden gourd. At this time, Ji Yufei could no longer resist the suction of the golden gourd and was sucked into the golden gourd. Chapter 883. I've finally killed this guy. Seeing that the immortal king of the Dongfang family had taken Ji Yufei into the golden gourd, the immortal king of the Zhao family and the immortal king of the Beitang family breathed a sigh of relief. In the end, we still have to use this treasure. The immortal king of the Dongfang family was very happy and complacent. It should be known that the immortal king of the Beitang family and the immortal king of the Zhao family had suffered a loss in the hands of Ji Yufei. However, as soon as the immortal king of the Dongfang family made a move, he took Ji Yufei into the golden gourd and solved all the problems. When the immortal king of the Zhao family and the immortal king of the Beitang family saw the appearance of the immortal king of the Dongfang family, they couldn't help but feel a little displeased. The immortal king of the Beitang family had used all his means, laid out the 8 gates heaven-sealing kill formation, and even personally attacked, but still couldn't kill Ji Yufei. The immortal king of the Zhao family was very famous, but even the immortal king of the Zhao family had suffered a great loss in the hands of Ji Yufei, so naturally, he didn't look good. Swoosh! The immortal king of the Beitang family waved his hand and took back all the formation flags that were inserted around the valley. The heaven-sealing kill formation immediately disappeared, and the condensed power of heaven and earth also dissipated. A part of the sky reappeared above the 3 people's heads. Since we have taken care of the trouble of Ji Yufei, let's go our separate ways, the immortal king of the Zhao family said. In order to kill Ji Yufei, in order to be absolutely safe, they joined forces. Now that Ji Yufei had been taken into the golden gourd by the immortal king of the Dongfang family, there was absolutely no hope of him surviving. Their temporary alliance should also be dissolved. That's right. The immortal king of the Beitang family nodded. Then let's go. The immortal king of the Dongfang family held the golden gourd in his hand and said with a smile. However, just as the 3 people were about to leave, something suddenly happened. Bam! The golden gourd in the hand of the immortal king of the Dongfang family suddenly shook and almost fell from the hand of the immortal king of the Dongfang family. Ji Yufei is not dead. How is this possible? The immortal king of the Beitang clan and the god king of the desolate ancient Zhao clan couldn't help but change their expressions. They knew that this golden gourd wasn't an ordinary king divine weapon. It might be a king divine weapon, or even a saint item that surpassed king divine weapons. It had been swallowed by the golden gourd, yet it had not been refined. It was truly unbelievable. The immortal king of the Dongfang family hurriedly took action to suppress the golden gourd. He struck out many immortal arts, drawing upon the power of the immortal king to activate the power of the golden gourd and refine Ji Yufei. At this time, Ji Yufei, who was in the golden gourd, was in great danger. There was a boundless sea of fire inside the gourd, burning Ji Yufei's skin and flesh to the point of cracking. Within his dantian, there was a ball of divine light flickering. The vast and mighty power of heaven and earth surged out, sealing the void and blocking the divine fire that surged over from all directions. Pure young true fire? Ji Yufei couldn't help but be astonished when he sensed the blazing aura of the divine fire around him. Even though the void was isolated by the power of heaven and earth, Ji Yufei still felt uncomfortable as if his entire body was on fire. Even the power of heaven and earth could not completely isolate the terrifying temperature of the outside world. It could be imagined that if an ordinary immortal spirit was swallowed by this gourd, it would most likely be instantly turned into flying ashes, and both body and soul would be destroyed. Ji Yufei tried to blast out a punch. The violent power shook the void. It was also at this time that the golden gourd suddenly shook violently. The black iron rod appeared in Ji Yufei's hand, and he directly swept it towards the sea of fire outside. There was no energy fluctuation, but a pitch-black spatial crack appeared in the void. The surging fire in front of him was immediately extinguished. Bam! The golden gourd shook violently. The immortal king of the Dongfang family finally could not hold on to the golden gourd. His wrist was shattered, and immortal king blood seeped out. I don't believe that I can't refine you to death. The immortal king of the Dongfang family directly sat cross-legged in the void. His hands danced, sending out waves of immortal king's dharma to fix the golden gourd in the void in front of him. Then, he drew lines of immortal Tao divine markings in the void, imprinted them on the golden gourd, and sank into the golden gourd. Boom! The boundless sea of fire in the golden gourd suddenly boiled, as if oil had been poured on the fire. The pure young true fire exploded, burning the void, and all of it surged towards Ji Yufei. In the sea of fire, a giant golden bird appeared, screeching to the sky. Then, it rushed out of the sea of fire and flew above Ji Yufei's head, circling and dancing above Ji Yufei's head. The power of the pure young true fire was at least several times stronger than before. Three-legged golden crow? When Ji Yufei saw the appearance of this giant golden bird, he was shocked again. It was the legendary three-legged golden crow born from the sun. Ji Yufei was no stranger to the three-legged golden crow, because the first elder of the Shaoyang peak of the Taishen sect, Zhenren Chaoyang, had a golden crow sky-burning robe, on which 9 golden crows were embroidered. In this golden gourd, there was a pure young true fire, which really surprised Ji Yufei. This golden gourd was definitely not simple. To refine a pure young true fire into the golden gourd, one must have the magical power to collect the pure young true fire. Even immortal kings and divine kings did not have this ability. Even celestial beings like celestial emperors and Shen King would not be able to get close to the sun and collect the pure young true fire from the core of the sun. Unless it was a powerful figure. This golden gourd had a great background, but these things did not allow Ji Yufei to think about it. Although his life was not in danger, he did not want to be trapped in a gourd. When the three-legged golden crow condensed from the pure young true fire flew above his head, Ji Yufei had already used the mountain and river cauldron. An illusion of an ancient cauldron appeared on his body. Even the terrifying divine fire descending from the sky was blocked outside. The mountain and river cauldron did not truly appear, but this was enough. The moment the mountain and river cauldron's illusory image appeared on Ji Yufei's body, the towering divine fire around him was extinguished. The fire was extinguished, and the void was collapsing. The three-legged golden crow that was circling above Jiu Fei was also swallowed by the illusion of the mountain and river cauldron. When the pure yang true fire disappeared, the whole world inside the gourd collapsed even faster. Crack! The golden gourd suspended in the void shook violently, and a crack appeared on its surface. Traces of fire energy seeped out from the crack. The immortal king of the Dongfang family was sweating profusely, and his hands were trembling. This precious treasure actually cracked. How could this be? He could not believe it. The immortal king of the Beitang family and the godly king of the primordial Zhao family were also shocked to the extreme. 1 crack, 2 cracks, 3 cracks. Crackling sounds rang out one after another, and the golden gourd that seemed to be cast from gold began to crack. Chapter 884. The golden gourd's divine light was dim and it was covered with cracks. It could collapse at any time. The immortal king of the Zhao family and the immortal king of the Beitang family saw that the situation was not good and were about to retreat. However, at this moment, a terrible aura burst out from the golden gourd. This was a terrible aura that made the hearts of the immortal kings and immortal kings palpitate. It was as if a supreme saint had awakened in the golden gourd. Boom! With an earth-shattering noise, the golden gourd finally exploded into thousands of pieces. The fragments turned into specks of golden light and shot out in all directions. The immortal king of the Dongfang family did not give up. He tried his best to protect the golden gourd and had no intention of escaping. Bearing the brunt of the attack, his body was instantly pierced by countless specks of golden light. At such a close distance, there was nowhere to hide even if he wanted to. Roar! The immortal king of the Dongfang family roared and was sent flying by a great force. He rolled in the air like a broken sack. The blood of the immortal king of the Dongfang family spilled from the air. His body was riddled with holes. The flesh of the immortal king of the Dongfang family had suffered unimaginable damage. Even his head was pierced through. The immortal king of the Zhao family and the immortal king of the Beitang family were not much better. The fragments of the golden gourd were too terrifying. The specks of golden light even pierced through the void. The body of the immortal king of the Zhao family emitted a metallic luster as if he had turned into a piece of divine iron. His aura changed greatly. This was a humanoid imperial divine weapon. This was the magical power that the immortal king of the Zhao family had cultivated. Similar to Jiu Fei's weapon integration, it could melt the divine weapon into the body, so that the body would have the characteristics of the divine weapon and release all the power of the divine weapon. However, the body of the immortal king of the Zhao family was still pierced by the fragments of the golden gourd. There was no blood flowing out of the wound. Some of the fragments were even embedded in his body. The immortal king of the Beitang family protected himself with the 5 elements deity wheel and was not injured at all. However, the 5 elements deity wheel was broken and the imperial divine weapon was half destroyed. Among the thousands of golden lights, a figure rushed out. He used the desolation steps, and his murderous aura soared into the sky. With 2 steps, he had already caught up to the celestial king of the Dongfang family. He directly punched out, smashing the celestial king's head and shattering his spirit. His head exploded, his Niwen palace shattered, and his soul scattered. Even if one was as powerful as an immortal king, his soul would still scatter. Without any suspense, an immortal king died. Jiu Fei then charged towards the Zhao clan's god king. He had the extreme speed of 8 steps, and his speed was unbelievably fast. Even the god king wasn't as fast as him. Swoosh! He directly appeared behind the god king of the Zhao family and swung his black staff at the god king's waist. A pitch-black spatial crack immediately expanded from his hand. Crack! Wherever the black spatial crack passed, the Zhao family's god king's body was actually split into 2 by the black metal rod. There was no god king's blood splattering out from the wound. His flesh and blood gave off a metallic luster as his lower body fell down. Jiu Fei, you brat! The Zhao clan's god king was shocked and furious. He had suffered heavy injuries one after another, and no longer had the courage to attack Jiu Fei. He desperately tried to escape. However, Jiu Fei wouldn't let him go so easily. Swoosh! A purple divine light flew out from Jiu Fei's dantian and slashed towards the Zhao clan's god king. That purple divine light was extremely fast. In an instant, it caught up to the Zhao clan's god king and split his upper body in half. Then, it flew back to Ji Yufei and entered Ji Yufei's dantian. Ji Yufei didn't pay any more attention to the Zhao clan's god king. The Zhao clan's god king's spirit fluctuation completely disappeared. His spirit was shattered by that purple divine light. The battle between cultivators was the most dangerous. The loser would usually be killed by the winner and completely disappear from this world. Seeing that Ji Yufei had killed an immortal king and a god king in an instant, the five elements immortal king of the Beitangs was scared out of his wits. He immediately turned around and fled. Shattering one's god king and wiping out one's life was the most thorough way to die. He wouldn't even be able to become a ghost. However, it was too late for the Beitang's immortal king to flee. Ji Yufei held the black metal rod in his hand and stepped forward in the void. He traveled a dozen li with each step and chased after the Beitang's immortal king as if he had teleported. The speed of 8 steps was unparalleled in the world. Even immortal kings were no match for Ji Yufei in terms of speed, let alone the Beitang's immortal king. When the golden gourd exploded, he had suffered a great impact and his imperial divine weapon was half destroyed. How could he escape? Ji Yufei chased him for thousands of li and intercepted the Beitang's immortal king in the sky above a mountain. Ji Yufei, what do you want? The Beitang's immortal king could no longer remain calm. His imperial divine weapon was half destroyed and it was difficult for him to exert its power. His strength had been greatly reduced. At this time, Ji Yufei's aura was extremely strong. A tyrannical power was surging in his body. His qi and blood were vigorous and his primordial qi was surging. He had already displayed the Ascension secret skill and his strength had increased by 5 times. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill 2 mysterious transformation realm immortal kings and a god king so easily. What a joke. What do you think I want now? Ji Yufei said coldly. Since these people had set up an ambush to kill him, he certainly wouldn't show any mercy. Whoosh. Ji Yufei couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on this guy. He directly smashed his rod down on the Beitang's immortal king. Although the black iron rod was less than 4 feet long, it was as heavy as an ancient sacred mountain. When the rod smashed down, the entire void trembled. There was no fluctuation of Dharma power, nor was there any terrible vision of magic power. However, the endless power still sealed the void, making the Beitang's immortal king feel that he couldn't escape. The Beitang's immortal king could only bite the bullet and use the half-destroyed 5 elements immortal wheel to block the attack. Boom! The black iron rod directly smashed the half-destroyed 5 elements immortal wheel. Countless 5-colored fragments scattered in all directions. The Beitang's immortal king spat out a large mouthful of blood and flew backward. The immortal king's body was full of fragments of the 5 elements immortal wheel. He had become a bloody man. The 5 elements immortal wheel was refined from 5-colored sacred iron. However, it was smashed by Ji Yufei's black iron rod. The power of this blow was really incredible. Die. Ji Yufei used the 8 desolation steps and chased after the Beitang's immortal king. Then, he directly changed from the 8 extreme steps to the 8 deadly steps. His foot landed on the chest of the Beitang's immortal king. Bang! Crack! The chest of the Beitang's immortal king was caved in by Ji Yufei's foot. His sternum was broken, his internal organs turned into mud, and blood gushed out of his mouth. Even his scream was blocked by the blood. The immortal king's body had suffered unimaginable damage. Bang! Chapter 885. Bang! Ji Yufei took the second step of the 8 steps absolute kill. Before the immortal king of the Beitang family fell to the ground from the sky, his whole body was torn apart. The blood of the immortal king splattered and burst into a cloud of blood mist in the air. Shua! In the blood mist, a 5-colored divine light rushed out. The power of the divine soul was mighty. In the 5-colored divine light, there was a little person wrapped around it, rushed into the sky, and fled into the distance. The little person in the divine light looked no different from the immortal king of the Beitang family. It was the immortal king of the Beitang family who cultivated the primordial spirit of the immortal king. As long as the primordial spirit of the immortal king was not destroyed, even if the body was destroyed, it could be reborn again. The speed of the primordial spirit was extremely fast. In just an instant, the primordial spirit of the immortal king wrapped in the five-colored divine light had already rushed dozens of miles away. Ji Fei, you are dead. Although the world is big, there will be no place for you. The immortal king of the Beitang family was almost crazy. His body was destroyed by a junior who was only in the immortal realm. After losing his body, he could not use all kinds of killing techniques. He had lost the ability to compete with Ji Fei and had no choice but to flee. Ji Fei naturally knew the seriousness of the matter. As long as this guy escaped, the news of him killing the immortal king of the Dongfang family and the divine king of the Zhao family would spread. The Dongfang family was one thing, but Ji Fei had already formed a life-and-death enmity with the Dongfang family that could not be resolved, but the Zhao family was different. The Zhao family was a force that had been passed down since ancient times. It had experienced countless storms and had always stood on the earth. It had not disappeared in the long years. In ancient times, there were many races in the desolate land. There were 4 supreme human emperors in the human race. One of the human emperors was surnamed Zhao. The Zhao family might be the descendants of the human emperor surnamed Zhao. The ancient human emperor was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the ancient supreme power. The orthodoxy passed down was definitely not simple. No one knew what the Zhao family had. If the people of the Zhao family found out that Ji Fei had killed one of their godkings, the Zhao family would never let the matter go. At that time, Ji Fei would really be in danger. Furthermore, there was also the Dongfang clan and the Beitang clan. If these 3 powers were to join hands to deal with Ji Fei, then no matter how big the world was, there would be no place for Ji Fei. At the end of the day, the cultivation world was a place where strength spoke. Whoever's fist was harder would be the boss. If Ji Fei was strong enough to make the clan of the ancients worry, then he would have nothing to worry about. If he killed Ji Fei, then so be it. Not even the clan of the ancients could say anything about it. Unfortunately, Ji Fei did not have the cultivation and strength to look down on the families of the clan of the ancients. Ji Fei sneered. He executed the 8 desolate steps and chased after the primordial spirit of the Beitang aristocrat clan. There was no way he would let his opponent escape. He didn't want to live a fugitive life from now on. The speed of 8 steps was unparalleled in the world. Under the use of the Ascension secret technique, Ji Fei could travel hundreds of miles in one step, like teleportation. It could be said that he was so fast that it was difficult to catch his shadow with the naked eye. Ji Fei was like the reincarnation of the ancient god of war. He walked in the void, and with a few steps, he had already shortened the distance between the two. This made the Beitang aristocrat clan's immortal king scared out of his wits. What a monster! The Beitang aristocrat clan's immortal king was shocked and had to go all out. He burned the power of his divine soul to increase the speed of his flight. The 5-colored divine light that wrapped around the primordial spirit of the immortal king suddenly flourished. The power of the 5 elements was mighty, and there seemed to be a 5-colored sun flying in the sky. The powerful soul fluctuations caused all the living beings below to tremble. Countless wild beasts scattered in all directions. It was a chaotic scene. You have no chance, Ji Fei said coldly. Competing with him in speed? That was simply courting death. Once the speed of 8 steps was used, perhaps even the celestial being realm immortal emperor and Shen king would not be able to catch up. The Beitang aristocrat clan's immortal king was even more shocked when he heard this, and he desperately flew forward without looking back. The method of burning the power of the soul was really effective. The speed of the primordial spirit of the immortal king was increased to the extreme, and gradually opened up the distance between the two. Mountains, rivers, and forests quickly passed under the two. After a while, the two chased for thousands of miles. It could be said that they were moving at a godly speed. Damn it! Seeing that the primordial spirit of the immortal king in front of him was getting farther and farther away, Ji Fei couldn't help but feel a little anxious. It was difficult for him to maintain his current state, and he would soon be beaten back to his original state. The Ascension secret technique had a time limit. If it exceeded 3 minutes, he would have to consume his life essence to maintain this state, which was not worth the candle. Even if he killed the opponent, he would also suffer a great loss of vitality. That's the only way. Ji Yufei gritted his teeth and operated the power of the divine sense in his sea of consciousness. In the middle of his eyebrows, a purple vertical mark emerged from under the skin, and the fluctuation of the divine sense came out of the vertical mark. Swoosh! In the next moment, the middle of Ji Yufei's eyebrows suddenly emitted a dazzling purple divine light, as if a divine eye had grown. Then, in the flickering divine light, a figure only the size of a finger rushed out of Ji Yufei's mudpill palace. The little person looked no different from Ji Yufei, but this was not the primordial spirit that Ji Yufei had cultivated. It was just a divine sense. Ji Yufei practiced martial arts, so he didn't have a primordial spirit. However, his divine sense was already strong enough to transform. Divine sense transformation, kill, kill, kill. In the midst of the roar, the little person that rushed out of the middle of Ji Yufei's eyebrows turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed forward. In the midst of the divine light, several weapons appeared around the little person. Swoosh! The little person formed by Ji Yufei's divine sense suddenly pressed behind the primordial spirit of the immortal king. In the divine light, the little person reached out and took a weapon next to him. Astonishingly, it was an ancient cauldron. The ancient cauldron emitted a boundless ancient aura. After being grabbed by the little man, the ancient cauldron emitted a terrifying energy ripple, as if an ancient saint was awakening. Roar! The primordial spirit of the immortal king sensed the danger coming from behind and couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Once again, he burned the power of his divine sense and desperately flew forward. The 5-colored divine light illuminated the world, as if a 5-colored sun had swept across the sky, causing the world to shake. Boom! The little person formed by Ji Yufei's divine sense made a move. An ancient cauldron rose from his hand and instantly became as huge as a mountain, suppressing the primordial spirit of the immortal king below. The illusory cauldron emitted a vast energy fluctuation, suppressing the world in all directions. The void below the cauldron was like a thin piece of paper, instantly shattering into countless pieces. No! The primordial spirit of the immortal king roared. He shot out rays of 5 elements divine light that were like divine rainbows, piercing upwards, trying to stop the mountain and river cauldron. However, all of this was in vain. Although it wasn't the real mountain and river cauldron, but the cauldron soul of the mountain and river cauldron, it was enough to destroy the primordial spirit of the immortal king. Rumble! The illusory mountain and river cauldron was like an ancient divine mountain pressing down from the sky, crushing everything and destroying everything. Nothing could stop it. Chapter 886. Ji Yufei used his divine will to guide the soul power of the cauldron of mountains and rivers to kill the primordial spirit of the immortal king. Even a primordial spirit as strong as an immortal king would be killed by the soul of the cauldron of mountains and rivers. There was no suspense. 3 super experts of the mysterious transformation realm had laid down a trap to kill Ji Yufei, but they were killed by Ji Yufei instead. It was hard to say that no one knew about the alliance between the 3 families, but since they had already been killed, there was no need to fear them. As long as Ji Yufei didn't admit it, there was no need to fear the ancient desolate factions. One should know that behind Ji Yufei was the Old Turtle, and behind the Old Turtle was the primordial demon clan. Ever since the appearance of the demon ancestor in the northern lands 300 years ago, some super antiques that had been sleeping for countless years began to awaken, including a few primordial great demons. The current demon clan definitely had enough strength to contend with the ancient desolate factions. There was no point in thinking too much. After killing the immortal king of the Beitangs, Ji Yufei immediately left. The shockwaves of a battle between immortal kings would spread far and wide. It wouldn't be good if others were alarmed. At this time, the extremely powerful aura on Ji Yufei's body began to recede like the tide. Soon, he recovered from the state of the secret art of ascension. The secret art of ascension was worthy of being one of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao. Ji Yufei knew that as long as his body could withstand it, he could increase his strength infinitely. 5 times, 10 times, even 20 times. As expected, as soon as Jiu Fei left, a few mysterious figures appeared nearby. The shockwaves of the battle between immortal kings could be sensed even from 1,000 miles away. Someone quickly discovered the fragments of the ruler divine weapon. Even a ruler divine weapon had been shattered. The battle was too intense, and it made people's hearts palpitate. Very soon, someone discovered the corpse of the Zhao family's god king. The corpse of the Zhao family's god king was very special. After being killed by Jiu Fei, the corpse actually turned into metal. Everyone was shocked to the extreme when they discovered the corpse of the divine king of the Zhao clan. It could be said that the divine king of the Zhao clan was the most famous one recently. The divine weapon king of the Zhao family actually died here. Who actually killed the divine weapon king? The divine weapon king of the Zhao clan had mastered the ability to smelt tens of thousands of divine weapons. His entire person was like a super weapon vault. All the characteristics of the divine weapons that he had refined into his body could be unleashed at will. The title of Divine Weapon King was not given casually. Isn't that a fragment of the 5 elements godly metal? That's right, it's the 5 elements sacred steel. Could it be a fragment of the 5 elements immortal king's 5 elements immortal wheel? The Beitang clan's 5 elements immortal king also died here. The Beitang clan's 5 elements immortal king's body had already been torn apart by Jiu Fei's 8 steps absolute kill. No one could recognize him. However, the 5 elemental immortal king's natal divine weapon was shattered into pieces. Everyone who saw this thought was certain that the 5 elemental immortal king had no chance of surviving. The fact that the Zhao clan's divine weapon king and the Beitang clan's 5 elements immortal king had died at the same time shocked everyone. Those were incomparably powerful immortal kings and godly kings. They were not ordinary cultivators, but they were still killed here. Who was it that killed them? When these people discovered the third corpse, they were so shocked that they were speechless. Yet another immortal king. 2 immortal kings and a god king had fallen in the mountain. 3 profound transformation realm experts had been killed at the same time. Even the entire cultivation world had not witnessed such a huge incident in a long time. The news quickly spread, and soon, the identities of the 3 profound transformation realm super experts who were killed also came out. After all the major powers found out who these 3 people were, they were indescribably shocked. The divine weapon king of the Zhao clan, the 5 elements immortal king of the Beitang clan, and the void monarch of the Dongfang clan. None of them were weak. The weakest among them was at the 3rd heaven of the profound transformation realm. The strongest among them, the divine weapon king of the Zhao clan, was at the 7th heaven of the mystic transformation realm. However, they had all died. They had been killed in the mountains. Even the imperial divine weapons that they had refined had been shattered. Everyone was so shocked that their jaws dropped to the ground. The people of the Dongfang clan seemed very nervous. They sent many experts to search the place where the void monarch had died, as if they wanted to find something. In the end, they found a few golden fragments and left in disappointment. This matter caused a huge commotion in the entire cultivation world. Some old antiques began to pay attention to it, but in the end, no one could say who killed the 3 profound transformation realm experts. Perhaps some people knew the truth, but due to various reasons, they didn't say anything. At this time, Jiu Fei appeared near the ancient heaven gate. Many people had already gathered near the gate. Even the sect masters of the ancient desolate era were in the vicinity. The sect masters were all celestial being realm immortal emperors and Shen king. They were old antiques that had lived for countless years, like living fossils. Such people were extremely frightening. Jiu Fei couldn't help but be cautious. He couldn't deal with such antiques at the moment. Although he had burned Dongfang Wudi to death, the antiques of the ancient desolate era were much stronger than him. If it wasn't necessary, Jiu Fei would absolutely not want to deal with such existences. Jiu Fei carefully roamed the area nearby. He was looking for Xiaoqing, He Tian, and Balon. He wasn't worried about the old turtle. With the Taihuang seal in hand, he didn't fear anyone. Soon, Jiu Fei found a secret signal left by He Tian in a valley hundreds of miles away. He followed the signal and finally found Xiaoqing and the others in the depths of a dense forest. Big brother, it's great that you're fine. Xiaoqing immediately went up to Ji Yufei and gave him a hug. Big brother, you were the one who did it, right? He Tian asked in an odd tone. Ji Yufei was taken aback. What is it? However, he quickly realized what was going on. Hee. I know you have a lot of enemies, boss, but this time, it's really satisfying. Erebus chuckled in a low voice and said gloomily. If even you guessed it, then those people should also have guessed that I did it. Ji Yufei's expression became incomparably solemn. This wasn't a situation he wanted to see. The Zhao clan, the Dongfang clan, and the Beitang clan should be making their move soon. But so what? I, Ji Yufei, am not someone who is afraid of trouble. In the blink of an eye, Ji Yufei thought of many things. I'll kill whoever comes to kill me. At worst, I'll turn the world upside down. Ji Yufei's eyes suddenly became fierce. Chapter 887. Next, Ji Yufei and the others waited patiently in the depths of the forest. They wanted to find an opportunity to leave the dangerous pseudo-heaven realm. He Tian went out every day to gather information and pay attention to the movements of the ancient desolation factions. They discovered a phenomenon. Among the people that entered the ancient desolation world, there were no demon clans. There were also Arhats from the west. The 100 tribes of the southern desolation also didn't enter the ancient desolation world. It seemed that not every faction could enter the ancient desolation world. The ancient desolation world was controlled by the 4 great clans of the ancient desolation and the 3 great sacred lands. Those that entered the ancient desolation world were all from the ancient desolation world. The Dongfang clan and the Zhao clan of the ancient desolation world were very close. They seemed to have joined forces, or perhaps the Dongfang clan had already submitted to the Zhao clan. Otherwise, how could the people of the Dongfang clan enter the ancient desolation world? The old tortoise was definitely an anomaly. No one knew how the old tortoise entered the ancient desolation world. However, some living fossils among the ancient desolation factions had vaguely guessed the old tortoise's identity. The old tortoise's background was too great. All the ancient desolation factions seemed to be afraid of him. Even the primordial Tao Master, who had 2 Emperor Divine weapons stolen by the old tortoise, had to endure it after a great battle with the old tortoise. The 4 almighties of the ancient desolation factions didn't appear. The old tortoise also didn't appear. However, some sect masters began to appear. Moreover, the entrance of the ancient heaven gate was guarded by at least 1 sect master. Not everyone could enter the ancient heaven gate. Time flowed by. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. During this period of time, Xiaoqing's injuries had completely recovered. This was naturally due to Ji Yufei's help, allowing her to recover so quickly. The battle between Xiaoqing and the young divine king of the Jiang clan had caused Xiaoqing to suffer heavy injuries. This kind of injury would require at least a few years to completely recover. However, Ji Yufei had plenty of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Moreover, he had taken Xiaoqing into his inner world and soaked him in the divine spring of life, using the boundless life essence to heal Xiaoqing's injuries. The effect was obvious. In just half a month, Xiaoqing had recovered to his peak state. Moreover, after the fierce battle, Xiaoqing's cultivation had also improved. Old Turtle gave the golden divine pagoda to Xiaoqing and the divine sun pearl to Balon. During this time, both Xiaoqing and Balon tried to refine the Emperor divine weapons they had obtained. Even though Old Tortoise had erased the mark of the original owner on the 2 Emperor divine weapons, it was still difficult for Balon and Xiaoqing to refine the Emperor divine weapons that Old Tortoise had inserted into their bodies. It was not so easy to refine an Emperor divine weapon. Although it would take a long time, it was not easy to refine it. In the past few days, the atmosphere was very gloomy, as if something big was about to happen. Ji Yufei and the others hid in the dark, feeling a little uneasy. More and more people gathered near the entrance of the ancient heaven gate. It seemed that the forces of the ancient desolate would withdraw from the pseudo-heaven realm in the next few days. The person who had set up this shocking plan had indeed killed many people. Even the experts of the ancient desolate forces had fallen in the pseudo-heaven realm. Even the sect master Shen King and the immortal emperor had fallen. However, the forces of the ancient desolate that entered the pseudo-heaven realm still had some gains. The things left behind by the great beasts of the ancient desolate that were suppressed in the world abandoned by the ancient deities were all rare divine treasures. However, it seemed that Jiu Fei and the others had gained nothing after entering the pseudo-heaven realm. Instead, they had formed an irreconcilable enmity with the Zhao clan of the ancient desolate. On the evening of the third day, a terrifying roar suddenly came from the entrance of the ancient heaven gate. A dozen people covered in blood rushed out from the entrance. Roar. A roar shook the mountains and rivers. A terrifying primordial beast had rushed into the passage from the ancient desolate world on the other side of the passage and was rapidly approaching the pseudo-heaven realm. The beasts of the ancient desolate world have all gone crazy. There are beasts everywhere. There is a beast tide in the ancient desolate world. The dozen people covered in blood who rushed out of the passage were the people that the various ancient desolate forces had left in the ancient desolate world to guard the ancient heaven gate. What the hell happened? A sect master Shen King, who was guarding the entrance of the passage, grabbed a person who rushed out of the passage and shouted, "Dead, all dead, all dead." The person seemed to have been scared silly. His expression was sluggish and he was in extreme fear. Trash. The Shen King threw the person away with one hand, then reached out and grabbed another cultivator who was covered in blood. Speak. The Shen King stared at the person and said coldly, "Yes, yes, yes, countless beasts appeared out of nowhere and attacked us. They killed everyone they saw. Everyone was torn apart by the beasts." The person was calmer, but his voice was still trembling. The Shen King was about to continue asking, but at that moment, a huge figure appeared at the entrance of the passage. A terrifying murderous aura spread out from the entrance. That is, after seeing the figure, the people near the entrance of the tunnel were startled and immediately backed away. Only the celestial emperor was still standing in front of the entrance. This was a fearsome savage beast that was covered in thick green scales. There was a vertical eye on its forehead, and it was as big as a small mountain. The beast stood upright. Its lower limbs were thick and powerful. Although its upper limbs weren't as thick, they were almost touching the ground. It looked like a gorilla, but it was definitely not a gorilla. The beast was staring at the Shen King with a pair of blood-red eyes. Jiu Fei and the rest, who were hiding on a short hill in the distance, were shocked when they saw this. They didn't expect a beast to enter the pseudo-heaven realm from the ancient desolation world. A terrifying murderous aura spread out as a man and a beast confronted each other. Some of the powerful beasts had already gained intelligence that wasn't any weaker than humans. However, these beasts didn't transform into human form and retained their original form. These beasts were extremely terrifying. They walked the path of the supreme beast venerable. Die, evil beast. The Shen King who was guarding the passage of the ancient heaven gate made his move. He soared into the sky and pressed his palm towards the beast. Swoosh! Countless rays of divine light burst out from his palm and intertwined to form a brilliant light screen that shrouded the savage beast's head. Every ray of divine light was like the sharp edge of a peerless divine weapon. It cut through the void and sealed the area. The beast could only escape by retreating into the passage. However, the savage beast did not retreat into the passageway. Instead, it brandished its long arms and sharp claws. 10 rays of black light shot out and tore at the curtain of light that enveloped the area. Chapter 888. The savage beast from the ancient desolation world was extremely powerful. It tore apart the light screen created by the Shen King and rushed out of the tunnel. Bam! The savage beast fell to the ground, and a part of the ground was crushed by its 2 thick legs. The ground shook, and everyone's heart was also shaken. Evil creature, the divine king guarding the tunnel pointed out with his finger. A divine light immediately shot out from his finger and pierced through the savage beast. Swish! The wild beast waved its right claw and smashed the divine light that pierced through its body. Then, it leaped up and pounced on the god emperor. When everyone saw this scene, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The savage beast was actually able to block the divine ability of the Shen King. It was truly unbelievable. That was the high and mighty Shen King, a celestial being realm sect master. The attack of such an existence was actually blocked so easily. Could it be that this savage beast was actually stronger than the Shun King? Swish. The Shun King immediately retreated. Before figuring out the strength of this savage beast, he was very cautious. This kind of savage beast was very frightening. Even the Shun King felt threatened. "It's a three-eyed devil," He Tian said. They hid on a short hill in the distance and paid attention to every movement in front of them. The vertical eye on the forehead of that terrifying savage beast was closed. "What three-eyed devil?" Xiaoqing said. He. Doesn't that savage beast have 3 eyes? If it's not three-eyed devil, then what is it? He Tian said with a smile. This name was probably made up by him. Boom. The savage beast fell from the sky like a huge mountain. The place where the Shun King was standing was completely smashed into pieces. Dust rose high into the sky. Even those who were a dozen miles away could feel a tremor coming from under their feet. Swish. The savage beast's 2 long arms danced, and each of its sharp claws shot out 5 rays of black light towards the retreating Shun King. A horrifying baleful aura filled the air, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. Roar. Just at this moment, another terrifying beast roar came from the ancient heaven gate. The entire tunnel shook and everyone was taken aback. Swoosh. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a beam of golden light rushed out from the passageway. Within the golden light, there was a strange beast wrapped in a murderous aura. It was a divine wolf with a pair of golden wings on its back, and its entire body seemed to be cast from gold. The golden divine wolf was like a bolt of golden lightning. Its speed was simply unbelievable. As soon as it rushed out of the tunnel, it immediately pounced on the crowd. Cries of alarm immediately rang out in all directions. Everyone panicked, and very soon, miserable cries rang out one after another. The golden divine wolf was incomparably powerful. Wherever it passed, blood splattered, and people died one after another. That wasn't all. The golden divine wolf flapped the golden wings on its back, and rays of golden light blades shot out from the wings, slashing towards the crowd. The golden light blades sliced through the void, and a powerful immortal king was slashed in half. Only his primordial spirit managed to escape, and his immortal king body was destroyed. Jiu Fei and the rest were hiding on a short mountain in the distance. When they saw this scene, they couldn't help but be moved. These 2 beasts that came from the untainted primordial world were too powerful. Their strength was comparable to celestial being realm immortal emperor and Shun King. Most of the cultivators gathered near the passageway were not weaklings. In fact, there were many immortals and gods nearby. As long as the sect leaders of the ancient desolation factions arrived, they could return to the ancient desolation world and retreat from there. In the 10,000 years of the untainted primordial world, there were only a few years when the heaven and earth energy was at its weakest. If the heaven and earth energy in the untainted primordial world recovered completely, even sect leaders would be in danger. Over the countless years, the major powers of the ancient wilderness had definitely suffered many lessons in the untainted primordial world. Many talented people had fallen there. There was even a powerful expert that was blasted into ashes by the heavenly tribulation that descended from the untainted primordial world. All the cultivators that gathered near the passageway were alarmed. Powerful figures kept attacking, but they couldn't stop the golden divine wolf. The golden divine wolf was like a god of death, quickly harvesting the lives of the cultivators. Among the fleeing figures, Jiu Fei saw a familiar figure. The southern Yang prince, Yang Wuliang, was almost slashed by a golden light blade. He scrambled into a dense forest, completely losing the bearing of the great Yang dynasty's prince. There was also the younger brother of the most outstanding descendant of the Zhu clan, Zhu Haoyang. He was swept by a golden light blade, but he had a forbidden treasure on him. A ball of blue light surged out of his body, blocking the light blade. However, he was still sent flying hundreds of feet away, falling flat on his face. Different colored lights kept appearing. Everyone was attacking. All kinds of magic treasures bombarded the fast-moving golden divine wolf. However, under the golden light blade of the golden divine wolf, the magic treasures exploded one after another, turning into specks of spiritual light and falling down. Only imperial divine weapons could resist the attack of the golden divine wolf. Soon, the other cultivators fled far away. Even the immortals had to retreat. Only the immortal kings and immortal kings were still attacking, chasing after the golden divine wolf. On the other side, the guardian of the passageway, Shun King, had already started fighting with the three-eyed monster. Several immortal kings and immortal kings joined forces, but they still couldn't stop the golden divine wolf. There was even an immortal king whose imperial divine weapon was smashed by the golden divine wolf and his body was torn apart. His immortal king's blood splattered everywhere, and even his primordial spirit was devoured by the golden divine wolf. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. Even the immortal kings and immortal kings who joined forces to attack the golden divine wolf couldn't help but feel nervous. A Shun King blocked the three-eyed monster, but the golden divine wolf was unstoppable and slaughtered cultivators at will. In just a short while, an immortal king and an immortal king died under the claws of the golden beast. No one could restrain the golden beast. Everyone was in danger. Jiu Fei and the others were hiding far away, so they weren't affected. At this time, a figure walked out from the depths of this world silently. He walked in the void and approached the passageway of the ancient heaven gate. Clang! A sword hum resounded through the heavens. A beam of dazzling purple light rushed out of the man's body. It instantly crossed hundreds of miles of the void and rushed towards the rapidly moving golden divine wolf. That person attacked from 100 miles away. He was definitely an immortal emperor of the celestial being realm. Moreover, he was a sword emperor. The sword light was like lightning, extremely fast, and could actually catch up with the speed of the golden divine wolf. Clang! The purple sword light collided with the wings of the golden divine wolf. Finally, someone intercepted this terrifying golden beast. Roar. Chapter 889. It seemed that something terrible had really happened in the desolate world. A savage beast king had actually come out of the desolate world. It was really shocking. However, the majority of them thought of another extremely frightening matter, and that was, these savage beasts were blocking their way back. No one was willing to stay in this dangerous and unpredictable world. It seemed to be a land of immortal spirits, but it was just a facade. In fact, it was an extremely dangerous place. Many people had been killed by these beautiful facades. However, those who were able to survive in an aristocratic family were not weaklings. There weren't many who were truly panicking. Moreover, the four almighties of the present age had yet to appear. Roar. With an earth-shattering roar, a savage beast king the size of a small mountain appeared in the passage. A monstrous murderous aura spread out from the passage. The whole world shook with the roar. Those with weaker cultivations had their ears bleeding from the vibration. They ran further away as if they were running for their lives. It was too terrifying. This savage beast king could shake mountains and rivers with a roar. It was a savage beast king covered in green scales with a pitch-black horn on its head. There seemed to be a green demonic light flowing around its body, which was full of power. Another one. Seeing this scene, everyone was frightened. Those were three terrifying savage beast kings comparable to the celestial being realm immortal emperor and Shun King. On the side of the human cultivators, there was only a Shun King and a sword sovereign. Moreover, there were faint roars of savage beasts coming from the other end of the ancient heaven gate passage. Was there really a terrifying beast tied in the desolate world? Clang! Purple sword light shone in the sky, and the peerless divine weapon hummed. The sword sovereign that rushed out from the depths of this world displayed great battle strength, forcing the golden divine wolf to retreat. Roar. The golden divine wolf kept roaring and flapping its wings. Golden blades of light tore through the void and slashed towards the sword sovereign. The power of the metal element was surging. This was a savage beast king that cultivated the power of the metal element. The fur of this golden savage beast was covered with a golden demonic glow. Like a golden divine flame, it was extremely majestic. The purple sword light was like a purple dragon as it danced in the air. It shattered the countless golden light blades and slashed at the golden divine wolf's body. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere. The savage beast king's fleshly body was extremely strong. Even the Sword Emperor's flying sword was unable to injure this golden savage beast. It only managed to cut off some of its golden fur. Even so, the Sword Emperor still had the upper hand. On the other side, Shun King, who was guarding the passage to the ancient Heaven Gate, was in a bad situation. He had drawn upon the power of the heavens and the earth and used his supreme ability, but he was still flustered by the three-eyed savage beast king. Roar! Shun King roared. A terrifying wave of energy rippled out from his body. Then, his entire body shone with dazzling divine light. Rays of divine light interweaved in the air and on the ground like ropes. This Shun King had drawn upon the power of the heavens and the earth and turned it into the life-slaying technique. Inescapable net. Shun King roared. A net of light immediately appeared in the sky. It enveloped the entire sky and fell down. On the ground, the energy of the earth rose and a huge net formed by the power of the earth rose. This deity emperor unleashed his trump card without holding anything back. As soon as the inescapable net was unleashed, the void was immediately sealed. Boundless energy surged within the inescapable net, obliterating everything in its path. Roar! The three-eyed savage beast king roared furiously at the sky. Its baleful aura soared into the sky. Terrifying demonic energy surged out from its mountain-like body. Its pair of sharp claws shot out 10 terrifying black lights that pierced through the void and tore apart the heavens and the earth. It wanted to break the inescapable net. However, this time, the three-eyed savage beast king couldn't break the inescapable net's power of the heavens and the earth. Celestials were called celestials because they could draw upon the power of the heavens and the earth. Shun King, who had cultivated Shinto, could use his divine ability to control the power of the heavens and the earth. This Shun King, who guarded the ancient Heaven Gate, cultivated a divine ability that drew upon the power of the heavens and the earth to form a terrifying inescapable net to annihilate his opponents. Once the inescapable net was used, no one would be able to get out. This was because the three-eyed savage beast king was challenging the might of the heavens and the earth. The three-eyed savage beast roared as the inescapable net shrank, gradually suppressing it. The terrifying power caused bloody wounds to appear on the three-eyed savage beast king's body, and blood flowed out of it. Evil creature, die! Shun King's body emitted boundless divine light. He drew upon the power of the heavens and the earth with all his might, wanting to obliterate the three-eyed savage beast king within the inescapable net. Rays of destructive divine light appeared within the inescapable net. A few rays of divine light even pierced through the three-eyed savage beast king's body. However, the three-eyed savage beast king was a savage beast king. It was so powerful that it was comparable to a celestial. It wouldn't die so easily. Even though its body was pierced through, it was still incomparably ferocious. Just when everyone thought that the three-eyed savage beast king wouldn't be able to escape death, an accident occurred. At this critical juncture, the three-eyed savage beast king's third eye that was tightly shut finally opened. It was a terrifying eye. There was no pupil in the eye. There was nothing but primal chaos. It was as if a primal world was evolving within the eye. Swoosh! A ray of primal chaos divine light shot out from the three-eyed savage beast king's vertical eye. It directly broke through the inescapable net and pierced through the body of the Shun King who was guarding the ancient Heaven Gate. Shun King's blood splattered. The reversal of the situation shocked everyone. A Shun King was injured. That savage beast actually injured a Shun King. That three-eyed freak is really patient. He only attacked at this moment. Hei Tian couldn't help but sneer at this scene. These savage beasts that had walked on the path of a supreme beast king had already awakened their intelligence. Their intelligence wasn't inferior to that of humans. These savage beast kings disdained to transform into human form and maintained their strongest form. On the hill in the distance, Ji Yu Fei and the others witnessed everything. The savage beast kings that were comparable to the Shun King and the immortal emperor were truly powerful. If no other experts came, the three savage beast kings would be able to annihilate all the human cultivators in the vicinity of the ancient Heaven Gate. The one-horned savage beast king had yet to make a move. Everyone felt an immense pressure bearing down on them. That one-horned savage beast king seemed to be disdainful of killing these weak life forms in front of it. It seemed to be waiting for something. Chapter 890. The immortal emperor and Shen King, who had cultivated to the celestial being realm, wouldn't really die as long as their souls weren't destroyed, even if their bodies suffered a destructive blow. In order to kill the celestial being realm immortal emperor and Shen King, one had to use a special method to erase their souls. Although the body of Shen King, who was guarding the ancient heaven gate, was pierced by the primal chaos divine light, his life wasn't in danger. The flesh and blood on the wound were growing rapidly and would soon recover completely. However, the Shen King's divine ability was broken, and his soul was impacted. His origin spirit felt like it was about to shatter, and he quickly retreated. However, the three-eyed savage beast king didn't want to let him go. Bang! The three-eyed savage beast king stomped on the ground with its sturdy legs, causing the ground to collapse. Its huge body soared into the sky and fiercely pounced towards the Shen King. Swoosh! Before the three-eyed savage beast king could reach the Shen King, the vertical eye on its forehead had already opened, and another primal chaos divine light shot out, piercing towards the Shen King. Primal chaos demonic eye. I didn't expect this three-eyed savage beast king to have cultivated such a terrifying divine ability of the demon race. He Tian's heart palpitated at the sight of this. Ji Yufei and the others also felt a chill in their hearts. The primal chaos-killing light shot out from the vertical eye on the three-eyed savage beast king's forehead was too fast. Even the Shen King couldn't dodge it. Bang! The retreating Shen King's body shook violently, and the primal chaos-killing light immediately pierced through his chest, leaving a bowl-sized bloody hole. Shen King's blood splattered out from the wound. Roar! The Shen King bellowed. The three-eyed savage beast king's primal chaos demonic eye was too powerful. The primal chaos-killing light was extremely fast, and it was hard to dodge. This made the Shen King feel that his life was in danger. Swoosh! Another streak of chaotic light shot over. Chaotic force surged, destroying everything it passed by. Even space itself was about to be reduced to nothingness. It was extremely terrifying. Moreover, this time, the chaotic killing light directly pierced through Shen King's head, intending to destroy his spirit and kill him on the spot. Damn it! Shen King roared furiously. Almost at the same time, a ball of divine light burst out from between his brows. The divine light wrapped around a tiny figure and soared into the sky. Its speed was also extremely fast. Bam! In the next moment, Shen King's head exploded like a watermelon. Everyone was stunned by the scene. The high and mighty Shen King actually ended up like this. Even though existences above the immortal god realm could live forever, it didn't mean that they wouldn't die. It was just that it was hard for them to die. Shen King, who was in the celestial being realm, still had a weakness in his body. The weakness was his head. In the head, there was a place that was filled with endless mysteries, the Niwen Palace. The Niwen Palace was where the primordial spirit resided. It could be said to be a world inside the body of a cultivator. It didn't matter if the other parts of the body were destroyed, because they could be recovered. However, if the head was destroyed, the Niwen Palace would collapse, and the spirit would also dissipate. There was only one result, and that was the soul would scatter. The powerful Shen King, who was in the celestial being realm, had a primordial spirit that was strong enough to leave the Niwen Palace and exist independently. Therefore, when the Niwen Palace collapsed, as long as the primordial spirit escaped in time, it wouldn't be considered as real death. At the critical moment, the Shen King, who was guarding the passage to the ancient heaven gate, escaped with his primordial spirit. The speed of the primordial spirit escaping was extremely fast. In an instant, it had already rushed into the depths of this world and disappeared into the horizon. Roar! The three-eyed savage beast roared. He tore the headless corpse left behind by Shen King into pieces, causing Shen King's blood to flow on his body. It was extremely ferocious. When everyone saw this scene, they trembled with fear. Some people directly turned around and fled. These savage beast kings from the ancient desolation world were too strong. Even Shen King was defeated and almost killed. Among everyone present, the strongest were the celestial being realm Shen King and the celestial emperor. If even these existences weren't a match for these savage beast kings, who else could contend against these savage beast kings? Let's retreat too. He Tian said. They were hiding on the short mountain, but they also felt the strong pressure from the savage beast kings. This kind of savage beast king wasn't something they could deal with. Taking advantage of the fact that they hadn't been discovered by the savage beast kings, retreating now was undoubtedly a wise choice. Big brother. Xiaoqing also agreed with He Tian's suggestion. It was too dangerous to stay here. When did you all become so timid? There's no need to be afraid, Ji Yufei said. Although these savage beast kings were powerful, he wasn't someone to be trifled with. Ji Yufei held a shocking killing weapon in his hand, which was why he was so calm. After all, he had once burned a divine king to death. The divine fire of the phoenix marrow divine pearl was much more powerful than the true sun fire of the sun pearl that the old turtle gave to Balon. As long as Ji Yufei activated the phoenix marrow divine pearl, not to mention the 3 celestial being ancient desolation beast kings, even a great expert of the present era would have to retreat. This. Xiaoqing couldn't help but blush, feeling somewhat embarrassed. Since boss says so, then let's continue watching the show. Hee hee. He Tian laughed. This guy was proficient in the art of seeking fortune and avoiding calamity. Once there was danger, he would definitely run faster than anyone else. Balon didn't make a sound at the side. Both Xiaoqing and Balon were demon cultivators, but the path they took was different from that of the savage beast king. They didn't maintain their original appearance, but transformed into human form and cultivated the supreme demon god's Tao. The supreme demon god's Tao and the supreme beast venerable's Tao were actually different paths that led to the same destination. When cultivated to the highest level, no one knew which was stronger and which was weaker. After the 3-eyed savage beast king destroyed Shen King's physical body, its pair of blood-red eyes stared at the immortals. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Without any hesitation, all the immortals present turned around and fled. What a joke! This 3-eyed monster could even cripple Shen King, let alone the immortals. The 3-eyed savage beast king's chaotic demonic eyes were too terrifying. No one dared to fight it, and all of them chose to retreat. TSK. A bunch of cowards. He Tian said disdainfully. Ji Yufei, Xiaoqing, and Balon heard this and couldn't help but turn to look at He Tian. No matter how thick-skinned He Tian was, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. It seemed like he was the first one to say that he wanted to flee. Swoosh. The chaotic demonic eyes on the 3-eyed savage beast's forehead opened and closed continuously, shooting out chaotic killing rays that pierced through the immortals who were fleeing in all directions. Miserable shrieks rang out one after another. The immortals who were hit by the chaotic killing rays only had time to let out a shrill scream before their bodies and souls were destroyed. They disappeared into the void, leaving nothing behind. The 3-eyed savage beast king was about to start a massacre. Chapter 891. Swoosh. The chaotic divine light pierced through the void and instantly caught up to an immortal that was flying far away. In an instant, this immortal was killed in the void. The chaotic divine light flickered continuously. In just an instant, 7 immortals were killed by the 3-eyed savage beast king. Everyone was stunned by this scene. Roar. Evil creature, don't you dare be impudent. The Sword Emperor who was fighting with the golden divine wolf roared furiously. Then, he pointed with his finger. A purple sword light immediately shot towards the 3-eyed savage beast king like a dragon. Swoosh. The chaotic demonic eye on the forehead of the 3-eyed savage beast king surged with chaotic force. The chaotic killing ray pierced out and directly dispersed the Sword Emperor's sword light. Moreover, the chaotic killing ray didn't stop there. After dispersing the Sword Emperor's sword light, the chaotic killing ray pierced straight towards the Sword Emperor. Clang. The sound of clang rang out. The Sword Emperor protected his body with the supreme sword chi. The Emperor sword rushed out from his dantian, and only then did it destroy the chaotic killing light. Even the Sword Emperor was shocked. The 3-eyed savage beast king's chaotic demonic eye was really too powerful. The Emperor sword suffered a great impact, and even the sword energy in its body was shaken. Roar. The golden divine wolf suddenly roared at the 3-eyed savage beast king, as if it was blaming the savage beast king for being a busybody. Then, it launched an even more ferocious attack at the Sword Emperor. Swoosh, swoosh. Swoosh. Swoosh, countless golden light blades shot out from the body of the golden divine wolf. The wings on its back seemed to have turned into two golden heavenly blades. They cut through the void, minced the world, and swept towards the Sword Emperor. Clang. Countless purple sword lights shot out from the Sword Emperor's body. At this moment, he was the sword, and the sword was him. He and the sword became one. Boundless power of the world gathered from all directions. A divine sword that was 3,000 meters long appeared in the sky. Then, it directly slashed down at the golden divine wolf. The terrifying sword chi rippled in all directions. The cold sword chi made people's hearts palpitate. This was the heavenly sword, the sword of a celestial being. It was terrifying to the extreme. Countless golden light blades were shattered, and the power of metal was dispersed. Swoosh. The Deva sword was like a hot knife through butter, cutting off one of the golden wolf's wings. Golden blood splattered everywhere, and the golden wolf let out an earth-shattering howl as it fell from the sky. The Sword Emperor's attack is indeed much stronger than the Shen King's. Seeing this, Ji Yufei was quite shocked. The celestial sword was so powerful that it seemed as if it could cut through everything in the world. This was the might of heaven and earth. The Sword Emperor of the celestial being realm could use the power of heaven and earth to transform it into sword chi. Once the heavenly sword appeared, it immediately heavily injured the golden divine wolf. Humph. If Boss had also cultivated to the martial emperor realm, I'm afraid that you would be able to shatter the heaven sword and kill the Sword Emperor with a flick of your finger, He Tian said with a low laugh. Among all the cultivators in the world, in terms of attack power, they were definitely the strongest among the martial artists. Even sword cultivators would find it difficult to catch up to them. The strength of their martial bodies could even be compared to the carnate divine beasts. In ancient times, there was a supreme martial artist who had cultivated the indestructible martial body who killed a primordial evil dragon that was born from the heaven and earth. Shattering the heaven sword with a flick of my finger, killing the Sword Emperor with a flick of my finger. Ji Yufei murmured to himself. He was now only at the 5th or 6th heaven of the immortal realm. How long would it take for him to cultivate to the celestial being realm? Just thinking about it made his heart palpitate. Roar. At this moment, the golden divine wolf that fell from the sky surged with boundless murderous aura again. It soared into the sky and charged towards the Sword Emperor who had become one with the sword. At this moment, the Sword Emperor had turned into 1,000 jong long heavenly sword, emitting boundless sword chi. Even the one-horned savage beast king, who was disdainful to attack, stared at the heavenly sword in the sky. The celestial sword had become the only thing in the world, attracting everyone's attention. Although the golden divine wolf had one of its golden wings chopped off by the celestial sword, it could still fly. This savage beast king could fly even without wings. However, after losing one of its wings, the golden divine wolf's speed immediately slowed down. It was no longer as fast as lightning, and it was almost difficult to catch its shadow. The golden blood of the savage beast king dripped from the wound. At this moment, every drop of blood emitted a dazzling divine light like a golden flame. A terrifying golden power surged out of the golden divine wolf's body, shaking heaven and earth. The golden divine wolf attracted the golden power of an area, and its whole body emitted a dazzling golden light, making it hard for people to look at it directly. The golden divine wolf was going all out. Swoosh. The celestial sword in the sky slashed down again. The dazzling sword light soared tens of thousands of jong, and the whole world seemed to be split in half. A pitch-black spatial crack appeared in the void. Roar. The golden divine wolf let out a terrifying roar, and a huge sound wave spread out in all directions. Even a few clouds in the sky were shaken away. The endless golden light dissipated under the celestial sword, and the condensed golden power was also ruthlessly shaken away. The celestial sword seemed unstoppable and indestructible. Without any suspense, where the sword light passed, the golden divine wolf's head was chopped off by the celestial sword. Golden beast king blood gushed out from its neck. Golden light flickered, and a small golden wolf about a foot long rushed out from the golden divine wolf's body. The small golden wolf soared into the sky, trying to escape. It was the primordial spirit of the golden divine wolf. Although the golden divine wolf was the king of the savage beasts and walked the path of the supreme beast king, it still cultivated the primordial spirit of a beast king. Buzz! The celestial sword vibrated, about to destroy the primordial spirit of the golden divine wolf. However, at this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly erupted, as if a giant beast had been awakened from its slumber. Then, a beast claw that was as large as a mountain slammed down on the Devaman's sword. Rumble! The entire world was shaken by this huge beast claw, and the void collapsed. The celestial sword was directly slapped 100 miles away, almost breaking into pieces. Everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded. That beast claw was so powerful that it shook the heavens and the earth, and even sent the celestial sword flying. The beast claw emitted a monstrous energy wave, and a terrifying aura spread between heaven and earth. After slapping the celestial sword away, it continued forward for more than 10 miles before dissipating in the void. Everyone was shocked. The celestial sword could kill a savage beast king, and this was something that everyone could see. However, it was still sent flying by a beast claw. When the beast claw slapped the celestial sword away, the primordial spirit of the golden divine wolf took the opportunity to escape. It directly rushed into the ancient heaven gate, and directly returned to the untainted ancient world. Chapter 892. The one-horned savage beast king attacked with a tyrannical power that caused one's heart to palpitate, directly sending the heaven's sword flying. Shua! 100 miles away, the heaven's sword disappeared, and the sword emperor's figure appeared. His face was deathly pale, and then he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His snow-white clothes were immediately covered with scarlet spots. The sword emperor of the primordial immortal sect is also injured. That's the head of the 4 great immortal emperors of the primordial immortal sect, the sword emperor. Roar! The one-horned savage beast king roared towards the sky, causing the world to tremble. A single roar shook the mountain and river cauldron, causing the surrounding area to tremble. Human cultivators are too weak. Suddenly, a voice directly sounded in everyone's heart. This was a powerful divine will that directly reached everyone's heart, as if someone was speaking in everyone's heart. The source of the divine will was actually the one-horned savage beast king. Everyone was shocked, but after thinking about it, they felt that it was nothing. The savage beast king, who was as powerful as the immortal emperor and the Shun king, had long since gained intelligence that was not inferior to that of a human. This savage beast king is too powerful, it's definitely a king among kings. I'm afraid that even the peak of the 9th heaven, the Shun king and the immortal emperor would have a headache if they came. Hei Tian said. They were still hiding on a short mountain in the distance, watching everything that was happening in front of them. I'll fight you. The white-clothed sword emperor of the primordial immortal sect walked step by step towards the one-horned savage beast king from 100 miles away. With every step, he crossed more than 10 miles in an instant. After only 7 or 8 steps, the white-clothed sword emperor arrived in the sky in front of the one-horned savage beast king. You're not qualified. The one-horned savage beast king's voice sounded in everyone's heart again. This was the most direct communication between cultivators. This kind of communication transcended the barriers of words and directly reached the heart. What? Hearing this, the white-clothed sword emperor's sword-like eyebrows immediately rose. Sword chi surged all over his body, and rays of purple sword light flickered in the air around him. It seemed as if he could use the celestial sword at any time, and a powerful pressure spread out. Go and kill him. The one-horned savage beast king's arrogance was frightening. He directly ordered the three-eyed savage beast king. The three-eyed savage beast king immediately rushed towards the white-clothed sword emperor. In front of the one-horned savage beast king, the white-clothed sword emperor didn't show any dissatisfaction. On the contrary, it was somewhat fearful. The white-clothed sword emperor couldn't help but be shocked in his heart when he saw this. Swoosh! The closed primal chaos demonic eye opened once more. Primal chaos energy surged within the demonic eye, and a chaotic world seemed to be evolving within it. The chaotic killing light shot out. Wherever it passed, the void would shatter soundlessly and be annihilated. Moreover, its speed was simply unimaginable. Buzz! The king's sword hummed as it charged out from the white-clothed sword emperor's body. Cold sword chi surged out, and the surrounding temperature plummeted. Even Jiu Fei and the others, who were far away, could feel a chill. Bam! The King's sword and the primal chaos divine light collided in that instant. The white-clothed Shen King used the astral sword to protect himself and quickly retreated. He wanted to widen the distance between him and the three-eyed savage beast king. The primal chaos divine light was blocked by the King's sword. When the white-clothed sword emperor's sword light increased its speed to the limit, it could barely keep up with the speed of the primal chaos divine light. However, the white-clothed sword emperor still felt threatened by the three-eyed savage beast king. The three-eyed savage beast king's primal chaos demonic eye was simply too terrifying. If the primal chaos divine light were to hit him, even the sword emperor's physical body would be pierced through. The physical body of a sword cultivator was much stronger than that of an ordinary cultivator. Especially after becoming one with the sword cultivator would become a divine sword that could clash head-on with artifacts of the same level. Although the sword emperor's physique wasn't as strong as the savage beast king's, it still couldn't be underestimated. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The primal chaos demonic eye on the three-eyed savage beast king's forehead constantly opened and closed, shooting out streaks of primal chaos divine light that tore through the void and pierced towards the white-clothed sword emperor. The speed of the primal chaos divine light was simply too fast. The white-clothed sword emperor was flustered and was bombarded by the primal chaos divine light until he retreated repeatedly. For a moment, he actually didn't have the strength to retaliate. Roar, roar, roar. Loud roars resounded from the ancient heaven gate. Needless to say, there were many savage beasts coming from the ancient desolate world towards the pseudo-heaven realm. Whoosh! A gust of violent wind suddenly gushed out from the ancient heaven gate. In front of the ancient heaven gate, sand and rocks were instantly blown away. Even boulders the size of small mountains were swept up by the violent wind. Amidst the violent wind, a huge black shadow rushed out from the ancient heaven gate. It was a huge bird, a ferocious bird that resembled the legendary Dopeng divine bird. Then, a gold and silver centipede that was as thick as a water bucket and several meters long with a golden head and silver body rushed out from the ancient heaven gate and danced in the sky. Savage beasts rushed out from the ancient heaven gate one after another. There was the terrifying two-headed divine ape, the giant snake that was hundreds of meters long, the divine lion that was the size of a small mountain, and so on. Every savage beast emitted a powerful and tragic aura. There were more than a dozen of these savage beasts gathered in front of the ancient heaven gate. Seeing this scene, even Jiu Fei and the others couldn't help but be moved. If these fellows were to block the entrance of the ancient heaven gate, wouldn't they be blocking everyone's path of return? More than a dozen savage beasts stood behind the one-horned savage beast. Every single savage beast emitted a tragic aura that gathered into a monstrous baleful aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. Roar. Just as the savage beasts were about to scatter and hunt down the human cultivators, a furious roar suddenly came from afar. A few figures emitting monstrous mana waves appeared on the horizon. It was noon, and the sun hung high in the sky. It shone down brilliant sunlight, dispelling the darkness and illuminating the world. The pseudo-heaven realm was a world abandoned by the ancient gods. In this world, there were the most basic things in all worlds: the sun, the stars, the earth, the mountains, and the lakes. Even if it was a world abandoned by the ancient gods, it was still a world. An immortal emperor is here. The real show is about to begin. Jiu Fei and the others, who were hiding themselves on a short mountain hundreds of li away, were able to see everything that was happening. The other cultivators had long since disappeared from sight. Only some powerful cultivators like Jiu Fei and the others remained hidden to the side as they observed the situation. Soon enough, the few figures that appeared on the horizon arrived nearby. They were three immortal emperors shrouded in immortal light and chi. Each of the immortal emperors was surging with monstrous waves of magic power. Among the three immortal emperors, one of them was an old man with white hair and a white beard. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and wore a daoist crown on his head. The other two immortal emperors were two middle-aged men in silver immortal armor. Chapter 893. If you retreat now, The ancient desolation forces will let bygones be bygones, the old immortal emperor said indifferently. Humph. You want us to retreat with just the few of you? Ridiculous. The one-horned savage beast king's voice resounded in everyone's heart. At this time, the three-eyed savage beast king forced the white-clothed sword emperor to retreat with the chaotic killing light, and retreated, standing behind the one-horned savage beast king. Then what do you want? A silver-armored middle-aged immortal emperor stepped forward and said in a deep voice. His whole body was filled with mighty immortal energy, and a faint bell sound resounded faintly in the void. It was the Emperor Divine weapon on this immortal emperor's body that was vibrating. Nothing much, we intend to sign a contract with the humans. From now on, you humans are not allowed to set foot in the ancient wilderness world, the one-horned savage beast king said coldly. What? The four great immortal emperors couldn't help but change their expressions when they heard this. The savage beast king of the ancient wilderness world actually wanted to sign such a contract with human cultivators. This is impossible, the old immortal emperor was moved and said agitatedly. The white-clothed sword emperor and the two middle-aged immortal emperors revealed angry expressions. No one would accept such a request from the savage beast king of the ancient wilderness world. Since that's the case, then there's nothing more to say. The one-horned savage beast king was also very straightforward, and immediately pressed forward. Rumble. The one-horned savage beast king was like a moving mountain, and the whole world was shaking under its terrifying pressure. It was extremely frightening. Buzz. The white-clothed sword emperor directly displayed the celestial sword, and 1,000-jong-long heavenly sword immediately appeared in the sky. Sword chi surged, and the sword light illuminated the heaven and earth, even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. A terrifying sword aura surged between the heavens and the earth. Even from a few hundred miles away, Jiu Fei and the rest could still sense the terrifying aura emanating from the celestial sword that shook their minds. Swoosh! The celestial sword slashed down from the sky, and the heaven and earth were split open, leaving a 10,000-jong-long spatial crack. The unparalleled sword light drew the power of heaven and earth, and like a sword of slaughter falling from the sky, it strangled the one-horned savage beast king. Boom! The one-horned savage beast king directly spat out a god pearl that was filled with boundless demonic power. It collided with the descending sword of heaven, and unexpectedly, the sword of heaven was sent flying. The celestial sword collapsed, and the white-clothed sword emperor fell out of the void, coughing up a large mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and he looked very tired. The one-horned savage beast was so powerful that it was immeasurable. When it spat out its inner core, it directly sent the sword of celestial being, which the white-clothed sword sovereign had transformed into flying. The white-clothed sword sovereign suffered a great blow. Evil creature, I'll fight you. When the old immortal emperor saw that the white-clothed sword emperor was seriously injured by the one-horned savage beast king's attack, he couldn't help but be shocked. Swoosh! As soon as the old immortal emperor arrived, he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Boundless immortal emperor energy surged out, and 3,000 strands of the horsetail whisk immediately turned into 3,000 flood dragons that coiled around the one-horned savage beast king. Clang! When the bell rang, a violet gold divine bell rushed out of the middle-aged immortal emperor's body and knocked away a wild beast that was charging at him. Swoosh! The chaotic killing light pierced through the void and shot towards the immortal emperor. The three-eyed savage beast king made his move, and his target was the immortal emperor with the violet gold divine bell. That's the primordial Tao sect's purple bell emperor. Someone recognized the identity of the immortal emperor. The immortal emperor came from the primordial great sect, the primordial Tao sect. His strength was incomparably powerful, and he was not someone that the divine emperor guarding the ancient heaven gate could compare to. Clang! When the chaotic killing light hit the violet gold divine bell, it only produced a bell chime. The violet gold divine bell shook violently, but it wasn't pierced by the chaotic killing light. The primordial Tao sect's purple bell emperor faced the three-eyed savage beast king. The two great experts fought in the distance, and their battle caused the void to collapse. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! The single-horned savage beast king spat out its inner Dan again, sending the 3,000 flood dragons flying away. After that, Its gigantic beast claw slammed out towards the old immortal emperor. A torrential force directly collapsed the void, forcing the old immortal emperor to retreat. Powerful, even the old immortal emperor of the ninth heaven realm was forced to retreat. Could this savage beast king be a savage beast sovereign? He Tian said. He Tian seemed to know a lot of secrets, but he still refused to tell Jiu Fei and the others. Although the difference between beast king and beast sovereign was only one word, the two couldn't be compared because they weren't on the same level. The one-horned savage beast king probably possessed strength that surpassed the savage beast king. Otherwise, the three-eyed savage beast king wouldn't have submitted. One must know that the competition between savage beasts was much more intense and cruel than the competition between human cultivators. It could be said that the savage beasts that lived in the primordial world vividly displayed the law of survival of the fittest. Another immortal emperor wielded a pair of black dragon shears, fighting against a several hundred jong long primordial serpent king. As the black dragon shears moved, two black flood dragons rushed out, tearing through the void. They emitted boundless killing intent as they charged towards the primordial serpent king. Those were the souls of two black flood dragons that were refined into emperor divine weapons, the black dragon shears. It's the Li clan's black dragon emperor. Someone recognized the identity of the immortal emperor wielding the black dragon shears. This immortal emperor came from the Li clan of the Desolate Era. This Li clan had a great origin. Legend had it that they were the clan of the supreme Tao ancestor. Immortal emperors and Shen king that could reach the celestial being realm were all peerless existences. Only almighties could suppress immortal emperors and Shen king. Without almighties, celestial beings were invincible. Many immortal emperors and Shen king referred to them by the emperor divine weapons in their hands. The battle between the primordial world's savage beasts and human cultivators was unavoidable. The conditions proposed by the primordial beast king were too excessive. No one would agree to it. More than a dozen terrifying savage beasts charged in all directions. The four celestial being realm immortal emperors weren't able to stop them. The white-clothed sword emperor was heavily injured, but he still managed to stop the primordial gold-and-silver centipede and the two-headed godly ape. These two primordial beasts were extremely powerful. If the white-clothed sword emperor wasn't injured, killing them wouldn't be a problem. But now, the white-clothed sword emperor was evenly matched with the two savage beasts with his emperor divine sword. It was hard to determine the victor in a short period of time. The gold-and-silver centipede was covered in thick armor that was even harder than divine steel. Even the emperor divine sword couldn't break through its silver armor. It could only leave a mark on its surface. Chapter 894. The battle between the human cultivators and the savage beasts of the untainted ancient world was unavoidable. The area near the ancient heaven gate became a battlefield. The four immortal emperors and several savage beast kings started fighting. Boom! The primal chaos divine light shot out and instantly destroyed a mountain. Bang! A huge beast claw slammed down from the sky, shattering a mountain range and causing the earth to sink. Dust rose high into the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Several savage beast kings were extremely powerful. Their brute force was monstrous. Every strike shook the heaven and earth, as though it was going to penetrate the heaven and earth. Their ferocious might was unparalleled, causing one's heart to palpitate. However, the four immortal emperors weren't weak either. They were able to fight against the most powerful savage beast kings. However, the other savage beasts rushed in all directions. Miserable screams soon came from afar. Some human cultivators were killed by savage beasts. Roar! The beast's roar shook the sky. In a valley, a ferocious and terrifying savage beast grabbed the legs of a human cultivator and tore the human cultivator into two. Blood splattered everywhere. The savage beast was bathed in blood and roared towards the sky. This scene was extremely bloody. Even those who were used to seeing life and death would be shocked. Such things kept happening. Miserable screams were constantly heard. The screams were filled with despair and fear, causing one's scalp to go numb. Swoosh! A huge black shadow appeared above the short mountain where Jiu Fei and the others were hiding. An extremely tragic aura descended from the sky. Jiu Fei and the others weren't spared either. They were targeted by the rock-like savage beast. The savage bird directly swooped down towards Jiu Fei and the others. A pair of golden claws directly grabbed at Jiu Fei, wanting to tear Jiu Fei apart. Courting death. Jiu Fei sneered. He stood on the short mountain and raised his head to look at the savage bird. His expression was indifferent. There wasn't a trace of panic or nervousness. He directly punched upwards. Bang! An extremely powerful force surged out from Jiu Fei's fist. It directly crushed a part of the void. The mountain-like sharp claws were sent flying. Gua! The raptor screeched and soared into the sky. However, at this time, Jiu Fei took a step forward and disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared above the raptor. Yin-yang seal of life and death. Jiu Fei let out a loud shout and formed a seal with both hands. The power of yin and yang interweaved in front of him and a huge seal appeared, emitting a terrifying energy fluctuation. Bam! The yin-yang seal had the aura of the great path circulating above it. It directly pressed down, like an ancient divine mountain falling from the sky, smashing the terrifying bird from the sky. The place where the ferocious bird smashed into was the short mountain below. Xiaoqing, He Tian, and Bulon couldn't help but be startled when they saw this, and then they hurriedly dodged. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire hill collapsed from the impact of the bird. Dust rose into the sky and the earth trembled violently. This ferocious bird was very similar to the legendary roc. Although it was very powerful, ordinary immortals would definitely be in danger if they encountered this ferocious bird. However, this ferocious bird was very unfortunate to have encountered Jiu Fei. Jiu Fei was not an ordinary immortal. He was a martial immortal who became an immortal through martial arts, so he was much stronger than ordinary immortals. As soon as Jiu Fei attacked, he blasted the ferocious bird down from the sky, displaying his unparalleled battle strength. It should be good to have a wild beast as a mount, He Tian said. He then rushed forward and shot out rays of yin-yang divine light, wanting to capture the ferocious bird. The yin-yang divine light condensed and did not dissipate. Like a yin-yang divine light, it entangled the ferocious bird that was struggling to rush out from the rubble. Whoosh! 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 18 rays of yin-yang divine light wrapped around the ferocious bird, locking its wings, claws, head, and body like a dumpling. Croak! The ferocious bird screeched and struggled with all its might. Its entire body flickered with demonic light, causing the entire earth to shake. Its mountain-like body instantly shattered anything it touched. The light of the 18 divine chains that locked the ferocious bird immediately dimmed and showed signs of breaking. This bird is too fierce. Xiaoqing walked over from afar. This He Tian actually wanted to subdue a ferocious bird as his mount. This idea was somewhat crazy. Wild beasts were not so easy to subdue, especially wild beasts that had already submitted to the king of wild beasts. He Tian dared to provoke the king of wild beasts. This guy was truly reckless. The fiercer the better, haha, He Tian said. He shot out more than 10 rays of yin-yang divine light and bound the ferocious bird. Then, he directly used his holy weapon to knock the ferocious bird out. Whoosh! He Tian directly opened up a space and stored the ferocious bird inside. You bastard! Jiu Fei was speechless seeing this. He Tian's actions were always unexpected and unpredictable. Bang! 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 At this moment, heavy footsteps could be heard from afar. An intense murderous aura could be felt from afar. Jiu Fei and the rest were startled and immediately looked in the direction of the sound. A ferocious beast covered in long fur was charging toward them. The beast was more than 10 meters tall, and every step it took caused the earth to tremble. Let's go. Jiu Fei did not hesitate and directly retreated into the distance. At this moment, many human cultivators also noticed Jiu Fei's group. Some people saw that Jiu Fei's group had actually subdued a ferocious beast, so they immediately rushed toward them, wanting to join them. At this time, it was safer to be together with powerful characters. However, Jiu Fei's group had no intention of saving them. They directly retreated because they didn't want to attract this kind of trouble. It was better to let the ancient powers fight these ferocious beasts to the death. Although the ferocious beast chasing after Gu Fei's group was extremely powerful, its speed was not as fast as Gu Fei's group. It was quickly shaken off by Gu Fei's group. The news of the beast tide in the ancient desolation world quickly reached the ears of the sect masters of the ancient powers. Moreover, the ferocious beast king of the ancient desolation world had already charged into the pseudo-heaven realm. All the sect masters couldn't help but change their expressions. If the ancient heaven gate was controlled by the ferocious beast, they would be trapped in the pseudo-heaven realm. And so, all the ancient desolate forces began to move. Even the grandmasters of the ancient desolate forces could not sit still any longer. They all rushed out from the depths of this world. At this time, the four current almighties were still in the depths of the pseudo-heaven realm, competing with the old tortoise for the mysterious yellow pagoda. However, none of them were willing to give up and come out from the depths of this world. Chapter 895. The almighties were still chasing each other and fighting in the depths of this world, all for the sake of a pagoda that shone with divine light. This was an extreme sacred weapon refined by the ancient ominous Xianhuang. In the eyes of the almighties, there was only the Xianhuang pagoda of heaven and earth. Everything else had to be temporarily put aside. As a result, the various ancient desolate factions were under great pressure. The passage to the ancient heaven gate could not be controlled by the primordial world's beasts. No one was willing to be trapped in the pseudo-heaven realm. One had to know that the sect masters of the various ancient desolate factions and almost all the experts had entered the pseudo-heaven realm. If these people were trapped in the pseudo-heaven realm, the Tinglong continent would definitely be in turmoil. The entire cultivation world might even be reshuffled. The Western Buddhist land, the far North Demon land, and the 100 races of the southern wilderness were all factions that could contend with the ancient desolate factions. If the sect masters and experts of the ancient desolate factions were all trapped in the pseudo-heaven realm, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, even the sect leaders couldn't sit still anymore. On that day, the sect masters of the 4 ancient desolate clans appeared near the ancient heaven gate at the same time. Wielding their sacred weapons, they killed the primordial beasts one after another, forcing the primordial kings to retreat and escape into the ancient heaven gate. The sect masters of the 4 ancient desolate clans led a group of sect masters to enter the pseudo-heaven realm through the ancient heaven gate and kill their way into the pseudo-heaven realm. However, the human cultivator's advantage did not last long. The sect masters of the 4 ancient desolate clans, as well as the experts of the Yaotai ancient sacred land, the archaic Dao Gate, and the primordial immortal sect, all retreated from the pseudo-heaven realm. The beast tide in the pseudo-heaven realm was too terrifying. All of this was driven by the Supreme Beast King, and in the end, the Supreme Beast King took action. The sect masters of the 4 ancient desolate clans and a group of sect masters fought against the Beast King and Primordial Beast King in the pseudo-heaven realm. Their sacred weapons even pierced through the sky. Even so, the patriarchs of the ancient barons' forces were unable to gain any advantage. One of them even died, killed by a primordial beast emperor. The patriarchs of the 4 great clans of the ancients, as well as the other patriarch-level figures, had no choice but to retreat from the primordial chaos world. Gu Fei and the others didn't feel depressed about this outcome. They paid close attention to the development of the situation, but they didn't make a move. Gu Fei and the others did not intend to participate in this battle. A battle of this level was not something they could intervene in with their cultivation. Even the great figures of the sect master level couldn't gain any advantage, let alone them. Moreover, the current almighty beings had yet to make a move. The human cultivators occupied the side of the pseudo-heaven realm, while the savage beasts of the primordial world, under the leadership of a few supreme savage beast emperors, occupied the entrance of the ancient heaven gate in the primordial world. The savage beasts of the great desolation ancient world did not dare to recklessly charge over. Both sides were in a stalemate. Gu Fei and the others knew that this was just the calm before the storm. As long as the almighty of the present age were free, this situation would be broken in an instant. More than 10 days passed, but there was still no movement at the entrance of the ancient heaven gate. As the sun set, Gu Fei stood on top of a mountain and gazed into the distance. From the depths of this world, A terrifying aura was emitted from time to time. It was the aura of the extreme Tao. The mysterious yellow pagoda of heaven and earth was not that easy to be subdued. It was a sacred artifact that had derived a divine soul. It had its own spirituality and was difficult to tame. After a series of battles, Ji Yufei had long sensed that his cultivation was showing signs of breaking through the bottleneck. However, he still had not truly broken through. The Tao imprint that was branded in his heart was the great Tao derived from the supreme martial ancestor. It was the inheritance of the martial ancestor and was difficult to grasp. However, he could slowly approach it and absorb it with an ethereal state of mind. Ji Yufei still lacked an opportunity to break through the bottleneck of his cultivation. Standing on top of the mountain and gazing at the setting sun, Ji Yufei felt something stirring in the depths of his heart. His state of mind was rising. His body was not moved, but his heart was moving. It was a kind of enlightenment, a kind of experience. It was as if the entire world had lit up. Life was like a dream, like the rising and setting of the sun. The lifespan of humans was only 100 years. Compared to the universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars, it was too short. All cultivators were merely competing against the heavens. Through cultivation, humans could grow stronger, to the point where they could coexist with the heavens and earth. Ji Yufei grasped a wisp of the Tao imprint and found the eternal direction of his cultivation. He broke through the layers of mist and his state of mind had reached another level. Time passed quickly. Ji Yufei stood on top of the mountain for 7 days. During these 7 days, he could not sense the flow of time. It was as if he had merged with the nature of the world. His body and mind were one with the mountain, the primitive mountain range, and the heaven and earth. He seemed to be able to hear the whispers of the plants and trees, he was able to understand the thoughts of the birds and beasts, and he was able to sense the pulse of the earth. He seemed to have really fused into this thriving world, and he'd already transformed into a grain of sand, a leaf, a flower, a tree, a blade of grass. The world was heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs. Humans were only a member of the myriad of living things in the world, and countless cultivators struggled bitterly for the sake of longevity. After the sun set, darkness descended. Ji Yufei seemed as if he had been standing there since time immemorial, and he even seemed to be unable to sense his own existence. Starlight sprinkled down, causing him to be covered in a layer of hazy starlight. A wisp of the morning sun tore through the dark night, and dawn arrived. The darkness passed, and boundless vitality rippled out. The cries of apes, the roars of tigers, the cries of insects, and the cries of birds appeared before Ji Yufei's eyes. He stood on the peak of the mountain like a statue for 9 days and 9 nights before he finally awoke completely. The cycle of the world, flourishing to decline, and declining to flourish. The cycle went on and on. Nothing was inevitable, and nothing was eternal. He faced the sky and let out a long howl. Everything in the world was empty, and longevity was like a dream. He only wanted himself to live, and only living was the most real. Ji Yufei had an epiphany. His body was like a vast ocean, and it absorbed the spiritual energy from all directions, the essence of the sun and moon, and the essence of plants. All of them gathered together. Strands of faint and imperceptible holy radiance circulated within Ji Yufei's body, and it was like sweet dew that nourished his body, causing his internal organs, bones, and flesh to be overflowing with a layer of precious splendor. His state of mind had already improved, and he was drawing upon the energy of the world to temper his body. Endless essence of the world flowed through his flesh and blood like a stream of water. In the end, more and more essence of the world gathered, and it seemed to have transformed into numerous sharp blades that slashed through Ji Yufei's flesh and blood. At this moment, Ji Yufei only had one feeling, and that was pain. He clenched his teeth and endured it. Chapter 896. Watching the sunrise and sunset, observing the changes of heaven and earth, Ji Yufei finally found an opportunity to improve his state of mind. He had finally broken through the bottleneck of his cultivation. Endless heaven and earth spiritual qi gathered, causing the surrounding weather to change. Visible spiritual light constantly entered Ji Yufei's body. The energy of heaven and earth in this part of the world was drawn. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 figures rushed out from the depths of the mountain. Is boss about to break through? Big Brother, Xiaoqing, Balon, and He Tian rushed out from the mountain and looked at Ji Yufei from afar. Ji Yufei had stood on the mountain peak for 9 days and 9 nights. Finally, he had taken that step. Rumble. The entire mountain was shaking. Huge rocks rolled down from the top of the mountain. Countless birds and beasts fled in terror. The surrounding area was in chaos. Ji Yufei had broken through. Boundless heaven and earth energy gathered around him, and his body gradually changed. The 365 meridians on his body gradually emitted a divine light, as if 365 stars were twinkling. The external world and internal world resonated with each other. Ji Yufei's body seemed to have turned into a universe, and his 365 meridians turned into 365 stars. In the end, the meridians in Ji Yufei's body also lit up, as if they had become divine, connecting all 365 meridians. At this time, a mysterious pattern appeared outside Ji Yufei's body. It seemed like a universe was faintly discernible, with the aura of the great Tao flowing. Meridians and meridians appeared from Ji Yufei's body. They were faint and illusory, interweaving into a pattern of the universe, mysterious and unpredictable. In the distance, He Tian, Xiaoqing, Balon, and the others were shocked. Ji Yufei's aura was growing stronger. Although they knew that Ji Yufei was about to make a breakthrough in his cultivation, the strange phenomenon that Ji Yufei was producing was too strange and unpredictable. The mountain peak that Ji Yufei was standing on had already turned into a black hole that devoured the spiritual qi of heaven and earth from all directions. All the spiritual qi of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 miles was drawn over and absorbed into his body, then gathered at his 365 acupoints. The changes in this part of the world couldn't be hidden from the powerful cultivators. Mysterious figures began to appear nearby, causing He Tian, Xiaoqing, and Balon to become nervous. Ji Yufei was in the midst of a breakthrough. If he were to be disturbed at a critical juncture, the consequences would be dire. He Tian was the first to make his move. He took out 18 banners shrouded in black qi and planted them into the ground around the mountain, setting up a killing formation. The black flag fluttered, stirring up the fiendish qi under the ground. The area around the mountain immediately turned into a ghostly realm. There seemed to be countless ferocious spirits moving about, and ghostly shadows flickered. The terrifying aura of the killing formation immediately startled the mysterious figures spying on them. No one dared to approach the mountain where Ji Yufei was. These guys are courting death. Xiaoqing was enraged. He and Ji Yufei were brothers who had gone through life and death together. He wouldn't allow anyone to ruin Ji Yufei's plans. Xiaoqing was about to make a move, but He Tian stopped him. Brother Qing, there's no need to pay attention to these small fries. The ones we should be wary of are those hiding in the shadows. He Tian said gravely. That's right. Balon, who had been silent all this time, also nodded. Xiaoqing sneered and didn't insist on making a move. He knew that some powerful figures had already arrived. These people hiding in the shadows were definitely up to no good. The commotion caused by Ji Yufei's breakthrough was too shocking. Everything within 1,000 miles was affected and the energy of heaven and earth was in chaos. The immortal cultivators and divine cultivators of the primordial era cultivated immortal arts and divine arts every day. How could they not sense the strangeness of this place? At this moment, Ji Yufei paid no attention to the outside world. His entire mind was immersed in his body, sensing the changes that were occurring in his body. Even if a meridian that was so small that it couldn't be seen by the naked eye vibrated slightly, he would be able to detect it immediately. Of course, it wasn't that Ji Yufei wasn't prepared. An extremely obscure aura lingered around his body. An illusory ancient cauldron appeared in the void around him. When Ji Yufei's aura rose to a terrifying degree, as if he was facing the entire world, a divine light flickered between his brows. Then, a small person rushed out from his Niwen palace. This wasn't an immortal or divine nascent soul. This was the most direct form of spiritual will. Ji Yufei's spiritual will was so powerful that it could take form. If he cultivated an immortal Tao or God Tao cultivation technique, Given the strength of his current spiritual will, his spiritual will would have long condensed into an immortal Tao primordial spirit or God Tao nascent soul. Ji Fei didn't cultivate immortal or divine Tao. Therefore, he didn't use his spiritual will to condense a primordial spirit or nascent soul. Now, his spiritual will rushed out from his Niwen palace. Whoosh! The tiny person hovering in front of Ji Fei's forehead suddenly emitted a blinding divine light. The light illuminated the entire heaven and earth. A terrifying spiritual wave spread out from the tiny person in all directions. In an instant, the ripples of his divine sense enveloped a radius of a few hundred miles. Everything within a few hundred miles appeared in Ji Fei's mind at this moment. That's, under his extremely powerful divine sense, nothing within a radius of several hundred miles could hide from him. Everyone who was hiding in the dark could no longer hide. Ji Fei sensed an almost familiar aura. He had never seen these people before, but the energy waves from them couldn't be concealed. Whoosh! At that moment, the sky above the mountain suddenly cracked open. Then, a gigantic pitch-black sword emitting a terrifying aura descended from the sky and slashed at Ji Fei. The people hiding in the dark had made their move. The sword of the celestial beings? He Tian, Xiaoqing, and Bulon were all shocked. A celestial being realm sword sovereign had been hiding in the side and only made his move now. Boom! He Tian made his move immediately. A huge star emitted endless starlight, illuminating the heavens and earth. It rushed out from He Tian's skull and met the celestial sword descending from the sky. The power of the stars shook the heavens and earth. The sky seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The power of a divine weapon was terrifying to the extreme. It was as if a real star had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. Chapter 897. Buzz. He Tian's sword fell from the sky, and the entire sky seemed to be split into two by this sword. The black sword light was like the light of death, and it emitted a terrifying aura that almost made one's mind collapse. The Deva sword displayed a terrifying power. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth that gathered towards Ji Fei from all directions was suddenly sucked dry by the black sword. The person who attacked secretly definitely wanted to kill Ji Fei. The black sword had not yet landed, but they wanted to affect Ji Fei, who was in the final stage of his breakthrough. Everyone knew that Ji Fei had reached the most critical moment. The person in the dark had actually cut off the source of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. If it was an ordinary immortal, he would have been disturbed long ago. If it was a light case, he would have failed on the verge of success. If it was a serious case, he would have been possessed by the devil, and the uncontrollable power would have directly exploded his body, crushed his spiritual soul, and destroyed both his body and soul. It's that bastard who attacked. Seeing this scene, the veins on Xiaoqing's forehead twitched. His anger was about to burn the 9 heavens, and his whole body was surging with killing intent. He glanced in all directions and did not find the person who attacked secretly. The person's cultivation was 2 levels higher than his. Unless Xiaoqing's divine will was as strong as Ji Fei's, it was impossible for him to discover the existence of such a person. Rumble. A huge star rose from below, emitting endless power of the stars, and went towards the black sword that was descending from the sky. He Tian used all his strength to activate the divine weapon, wanting to block the Deva sword. However, the Deva sword attracted the power of heaven and earth from all directions. Like a sword of heavenly punishment, it was unstoppable, as if it could destroy everything in the world. The Deva sword collided with the huge star. The indestructible Deva sword paused for a moment. In the next moment, endless black sword light erupted from the Deva sword, and the huge star emitted a dazzling brilliance, which was immediately suppressed. Bang! Big Star was directly sent flying by the sword of Deva. He Tian's body swayed, and he almost fell from the sky. The almighty holy weapon was sent flying, and he also suffered a great impact. The soul fire in his skull also dimmed. Even if he used his almighty holy weapon, he would not be able to block the sword of Deva. He Tian's cultivation was too weak. There was a gap of 2 realms between them. Furthermore, he could not unleash the full power of this almighty holy weapon. Swoosh! Right at that moment, a figure rushed over from afar. He stretched out his hand and used his magic power to form a giant hand. He reached out to grab the star that was sent flying by the sword of Deva, wanting to take it away. That great star was a holy weapon of a powerful being. Even the eyes of the current world's great beings would go red. Not to mention other people, there were people who wanted to take advantage of it. The large hand directly grabbed the dim great star and then took it back. Mother **K, you dare to steal something that belongs to me, Hei Tian? Seeing this, Hei Tian almost went berserk. Two sharp divine lights shot out from his eye sockets. Die! The dim soul fire in Hei Tian's skull suddenly lit up again, emitting a dazzling soul light. The power of the soul surged out from his skull. Boom! The great star that was taken away by that person suddenly shook violently. Suddenly, it began to shake violently, emitting a terrifying energy fluctuation. The power of the stars was like 100,000 volcanoes erupting at the same time, surging out from the big star. No, that person was scared out of his wits. He used his great magic power to suppress the great star, but the power of the stars instantly tore his body to pieces. Even his soul couldn't escape. Both his body and soul were destroyed. That was an immortal god who wanted to take advantage of the situation. However, Hei Tian wasn't so easy to take advantage of, so he ended up in such a miserable state. The great star turned into a beam of starlight and rushed back from afar, disappearing into Hei Tian's skull. Hei Tian used his soul power to refine this holy weapon day and night, connecting with the weapon's aura. Although he hadn't completely erased the mark left behind by the weapon's previous owner, Hei Tian could already make the weapon display the power of a celestial emperor or Shen king. However, this holy weapon of Hei Tian couldn't stop the sword unless he completely refined it. Swoosh! The Deva sword was blocked by the great star. It only paused in the sky for a moment before falling down again. The pitch-black sword light tore through the void, splitting open a pitch-black spatial crack that was tens of thousands of feet long. At this time, Ji Yufei was still standing on the mountain peak like a stone statue, as if he didn't sense the danger rapidly approaching him. Although the sword of the celestial being had sucked away the spirit energy of heaven and earth converging from all directions, Ji Yufei's body was still surging with monstrous spirit energy. It wasn't the spirit energy gathered from the external world, but the endless spirit energy provided to him by the three inner worlds he controlled. Just as the sword of the celestial being destroyed the void and cut off all connections between Ji Yufei and the external world, Ji Yufei connected with the three inner worlds. Between his eyebrows, his heart, and his dantian, the spirit energy of heaven and earth continuously surged out and spread to Ji Yufei's entire body. The little person floating in front of Ji Yufei's eyebrows was still sitting cross-legged in the void. Its body shone with a dazzling divine light, and the waves of its divine sense shrouded in all directions. In a valley 100 kilometers away, a black figure was sitting cross-legged. This person seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. There was not the slightest fluctuation or aura from his body, as if he was a corpse. However, under the unbelievably powerful waves of Ji Yufei's divine sense, this person didn't hide. It was this person who had made a move. Ji Yufei sneered. Since the other party wanted to kill him, he would cut off this person's body and collect some interest first. He didn't care who the other party was or where he came from. He directly condensed his divine sense into thousands of swords and blades, and from the sky above the valley, he slashed at the person. The other party had used the sword of the celestial being, and his primordial spirit had become one with the divine sword of the emperor. The person in the valley was the body left behind by that person. If the body was cut, the other party would also be seriously injured. The swords and blades condensed by Ji Yufei's divine sense were like real swords and blades that could pierce through the void. However, a scene that shocked Ji Yufei happened. The thousands of swords and blades of divine sense slashed at the person's body like clay oxen entering the sea. They were all swallowed up by that person's body and couldn't hurt him at all. How can this be? Ji Yufei was really shocked, but at this time, the terrifying sword of the celestial being above his head was about to fall on his head. There was no time for Ji Yufei to think. He directly activated the power of the mountain and river cauldron in his body. Buzz. Chapter 898. Boom. The celestial sword emitted a terrifying sword chi that descended from the sky. The void was instantly annihilated by the pitch-black sword light, destroying everything in its path. This was the terror of a celestial realm sword emperor. A single sword could destroy all divine abilities. As long as this sword was in hand, no matter how peerless an immortal technique or divine ability was, it would still be destroyed by the celestial sword. As the sword light descended, the entire mountain was split into two halves. The earth trembled and dust soared into the sky as a bottomless abyss appeared on the ground. Big Brother, Ji Yufei, He Tian, Xiaoqing, and Bulon were dumbfounded. They had already witnessed the might of the celestial sword. It could be said to be invincible, and only the one-horned beast king could suppress it with its supreme brute force. Only absolute power could suppress the Sword Emperor and destroy the Sword of the Celestials. Although Ji Yufei's immortal god martial physique was strong enough to contend against a sect master, he was absolutely not strong enough to resist the celestial sword. However, after the dust settled, a figure appeared on the mountain peak that was split in two. It's Big Brother. Big Brother is fine. This is great. He Tian and Xiaoqing were overjoyed. In fact, they were worried for nothing. Ji Yufei could have easily hidden in his inner world. Those who were watching in the dark also thought that Ji Yufei was dead for sure, but the result made their jaws drop to the ground. You actually have, an incomparably shocked voice resounded in the sky. Buzz. The celestial sword once again appeared in the sky, emitting a terrifying sword chi fluctuation. It was like a sword of heaven's retribution hanging between heaven and earth, causing people's hearts to palpitate. Ji Yufei stood proudly on the top of the mountain and looked up. Two beams of divine light shot out of his eyes, making it hard for others to look at him directly. He completely ignored the horrible pressure and breath coming from the Deva sword and faced it directly. At this time, his entire body was surging with a monstrous amount of energy. It was like a yin-yang divine flame was burning, causing the void to distort. The little person between his eyebrows had already disappeared. His 365 major acupoints were flashing with light. Each acupoint contained an endless amount of energy. They were like lakes of life, nourishing Ji Yufei's body. There seemed to be a figure sitting cross-legged in each of the acupoints, exuding a vast aura of life. It was as if there were 365 lives being nurtured in the acupoints. Ji Yufei's body finally underwent another transformation. His aura of life was unprecedentedly strong. At this time, he had already cultivated the source of life to all 365 acupoints. This was different from the immortal path and the divine path. The current Ji Yufei, even if his head was blown up, would not die. The source of life began to spread throughout his body. All 365 acupoints nurtured the source of life. As long as Ji Yufei's source of life was not extinguished, he would not die. He had already put away the mountain and river cauldron. You're courting death. A cold voice resounded in the sky. Boundless killing intent surged. The celestial sword vibrated again, emitting a terrifying breath that could shock all directions. It was about to descend from the sky again. Under the attack of the celestial sword, Ji Yufei actually put away the mountain and river cauldron. This was really no different from suicide. He already had 1 foot in the mysterious transformation realm, but compared to the celestial sword emperor, there was still a large realm difference. He was still no match for the celestial sword emperor. The celestial sword emperor was known as the unparalleled powerhouse with the highest attack power among his peers. Who's courting death? We still don't know. Ji Yufei suddenly laughed. Then, his aura began to rapidly increase. His blood chi soared into the sky, and the void around him began to ripple. Ji Yufei's body was so strong that it could directly shake heaven and earth. Even the bodies of the current supreme powerhouses could not compare. Haha. How laughable. You're overestimating yourself. The voice in the sky resounded again, full of disdain. Seeing Ji Yufei increase his strength without any regard for his own life, he thought that Ji Yufei was going to fight him to the death. A king of immortal martial arts who surpassed immortal gods risked his life to fight a celestial sword emperor. This was probably the stupidest move in history that would never be repeated in the future. What is Big Brother trying to do? Is Big Brother crazy? Xiaoqing, He Tian, Balon, and the others couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Ji Yufei's action was too crazy. Since that's the case, I'll send you on your way. The celestial sword vibrated and was about to descend from the sky. However, at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened and a terrifying destructive aura descended from the endless sky. A destructive power was rapidly condensing. Huge bolts of lightning began to appear in the pitch-black sky. This was the power of heaven and earth. This is, the power of heaven and earth rapidly condensed, and the entire sky darkened as if night had suddenly descended. No one knew what was going on. Run, as far as you can. Ji Yufei's voice rang out in the hearts of He Tian, Xiaoqing, and Balon. From his voice, one could hear that Ji Yufei was very anxious. He was urging He Tian's group to leave as soon as possible. This can't be. He Tian stared at the dark sky. He seemed to have seen something. The soul fire in his skull was pulsing violently, but he wasn't sure. Although Xiaoqing and the others didn't know what was going on, they didn't think too much about it and flew away. Rumble, heaven shaking, earth-shattering thunder began to ring out, and huge bolts of lightning began to fall from the sky. Even the Deva sword in the sky was affected by it. Boom! At this moment, a golden bolt of lightning descended from the sky, striking towards Ji Yufei above the mountain peak. The destructive aura of heaven and earth was vast and mighty, but the celestial sword happened to block the golden lightning. How is this possible? A horrified voice resounded in the sky. The Sword Emperor who was hiding in the sky seemed to have encountered something extremely terrifying and couldn't maintain his composure. The speed of the golden lightning was too fast. Even an immortal emperor in celestial realm couldn't dodge it. The celestial sword was struck by the lightning. Buzz! The celestial sword vibrated violently. The frightening black sword light dimmed all of a sudden. The fluctuation of sword chi also weakened, and it almost fell from the sky. Heavens! What is this? Why did the weather change so suddenly? Why is there a golden lightning? Could this be the legendary heavenly tribulation? Cries of surprise came from the darkness. The people hiding in the distance were also shocked to the extreme, and their faces changed color. Seeing that the situation was not good, some people immediately jumped out of their hiding places and directly retreated to the distance. Chapter 899. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky, shaking everything in the world. This was the power of heaven and earth. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even the celestial sword seemed insignificant under the power of heaven and earth. Rumble, golden lightning slithered in the dark sky like golden snakes. The whole world was pressing down. The power of destruction was still condensing, shaking everyone's soul. Whoosh! Under the terrifying pressure, even the celestial being sword formed by the celestial being sword emperor had to retreat. The celestial being sword turned into a black sword light and rushed into the distance. Boom! The golden lightning descended from the sky and directly bombarded the celestial being sword. What's going on? The sword emperor couldn't help but be shocked. The golden lightning that descended from the sky contained the terrifying power of metal. It was like a peerless godly weapon chopping down from the sky. The celestial being sword emperor shook continuously and almost fell from the sky. At this moment, he couldn't care less about killing Ji Yufei. He wanted to escape. Although he was a celestial being sword emperor, he was extremely afraid of the heavenly trial. He was afraid of attracting his own heavenly trial. Whoosh! The speed of the celestial sword was extremely fast, and it disappeared into the horizon in an instant. However, bolts of golden lightning still fell from the sky and chased after it like a shadow. Rumble! The sound of thunder kept coming from afar. The terrifying lightning did not stop. Seeing this scene, everyone's jaws dropped to the ground in shock. Then, they turned around and fled. There was no such thing as a heavenly tribulation in the Tenglong continent. However, at this moment, everyone had already guessed what had happened. Heavenly trial. Yes, it was the legendary heavenly trial. During the late Desolate Era, the world changed greatly and the law of heaven and earth also changed. Therefore, there was no heavenly trial in the Tenglong continent. Even if a cultivator cultivated to the celestial being realm, the immortal thunder tribulation would not descend. They couldn't ascend and enter the legendary cradle of the strong, the heaven realm. However, some primordial lands still had the law of heaven and earth from the primordial era. Therefore, it was easy to trigger heavenly tribulations in these primordial lands. The primordial powers had existed for countless years and naturally knew about the taboo of these primordial lands. Therefore, no one was willing to break through the bottleneck in these primordial lands. If one cultivated in these primordial lands and broke through the bottleneck and entered a new realm, the heavenly trial would descend. Of course, even though the heavenly tribulation was dangerous, not many people would be able to survive it. However, if one was lucky enough to survive the heavenly tribulation, they would obtain great benefits. During the tribulation, a cultivator's body and even their soul would be baptized by the power of heaven and earth. Their body would be at least 2 or 3 times stronger than an ordinary cultivator. Their divine sense would also be several times stronger than an ordinary cultivator. Immortals who underwent tribulation and immortals who did not undergo tribulation were usually one level apart in strength. Immortals who underwent tribulation were true immortals. They were the difference between true immortals and true immortals. However, the number of true immortals and true immortals on the Tinglong continent could be counted on one hand. They were definitely super antiques. All the cultivators who grew up in the later primordial era had never experienced the baptism of heavenly tribulations. Therefore, the immortals who grew up in the latter period of the primordial era were fake immortals and fake immortals. Jiu Fei broke through the bottleneck and reached another realm. Therefore, he attracted the heavenly tribulation. The heavens and earth would not allow the existence of someone who defied the heavens. The heavenly tribulation would descend to destroy those who defied the heavens. The power of heaven and earth gathered rapidly. A pitch-black tribulation cloud that covered a radius of several hundred miles appeared in the sky. The power within the tribulation cloud was condensing and brewing. Rumble, bolts of lightning flickered in the tribulation cloud, emitting a terrifying aura that could destroy the world. The lightning in the tribulation cloud was not only golden in color, but also gradually revealed 5 different colors. It was the power of the 5 elements. 5 elements lightning tribulation. He Tian, Xiaoqing, and Bulon had already retreated several hundred miles away from the tribulation cloud. The drastic change in the world had alarmed many people. Boss actually attracted the 5 elements lightning tribulation. He Tian seemed to be surprised. He seemed to know the origin of this heavenly tribulation, so he felt a little uneasy. Xiaoqing and Bulon were also frightened. Before the heavens and earth, everything in the world would become incomparably insignificant, like ants. Even immortals were no exception. Who is so crazy as to make a breakthrough in the primordial era? Doesn't he know that even if he succeeds, there will be great danger in advancing his cultivation? Maybe he's not from the clan of the ancients. Figures began to appear in the mountains outside the tribulation cloud. On top of a mountain, 7 or 8 cultivators pointed at the figure below the tribulation cloud and whispered to each other. In the face of the power of heaven and earth, no one could remain calm. At this time, Jiu Fei's heavenly tribulation was still brewing. There seemed to be a will controlling everything, causing Jiu Fei to feel an unprecedented danger approaching him. Heavenly tribulation, he wanted to challenge it. After overcoming it, he would be invincible among his peers and become the true king of immortals. Even if he faced the celestial being realm immortal emperor and Shen King, he would be able to contend against them. On the path of martial arts, cultivating the physical body and refining the origin of life had already reached the supreme realm of proving the Tao through strength. Attracting the heavenly tribulation was the best way to refine the physical body and martial body. However, before Jiu Fei's heavenly tribulation started, in the depths of a mountain 1,000 miles away, there was an unlucky fellow struggling under the thousands of lightning bolts. The area within a radius of 100 miles had already turned into a sea of lightning. Every bolt of lightning was as large as a mountain, and wherever the lightning passed, even the mountain ridges would be blasted apart. Ah! How could this be? The black-clothed sword emperor who wanted to kill Jiu Fei roared. His voice was filled with fear. He had actually triggered his own heavenly tribulation. This was the heavenly tribulation of a celestial being realm emperor. It was extremely terrifying. Endless lightning bolts fell from the sky, tearing the void and destroying everything. A sword emperor vaguely appeared in the sea of lightning formed by the heavenly tribulation, emitting terrifying sword chi. This sword emperor was using the sword emperor to resist his heavenly tribulation. There were actually two places in the pseudo-heaven realm where heavenly tribulations appeared. The fluctuations of the heavenly tribulation soon alarmed the big shots of the ancient desolation. That's the sword emperor of the Zhao clan. He's actually undergoing the heavenly tribulation. Chapter 900. You are currently reading the indestructible martial lord's text, Chapter 903, 5 Elemental Lightning Tribulation. Throughout the years, the ancient desolate world had been opened many times. Among those who had entered the ancient desolate world, there were many who had stagnated in their cultivation. They had tried to attract the heavenly tribulation inside, borrowing the power of the heavenly tribulation to increase their strength. However, not a single one of those incredibly powerful old-timers hadn't been killed in body and soul by the heavenly tribulations they'd summoned. Heavenly tribulation was a calamity sent down by the heavens. Who could go against the heavens? Undergoing the heavenly tribulation was definitely extremely dangerous. It was like trying to find a chance of survival in the midst of certain death. No matter how talented you were, no matter how powerful you were, under the heavenly tribulation, you could turn into ashes and disappear from the world. There was absolutely no chance for you to start over. The chance of survival was simply too difficult to grasp. Therefore, even in the ancient desolate world, when there were many heroes and the White Clan in great numbers, there were only a few who could actually pass the heavenly tribulation. The mountains within 100 li were all shattered. The heavenly tribulation summoned by a celestial realm sword emperor was simply too terrifying. No one dared to get close. The celestial sword could no longer materialize, and the black-clothed sword emperor's body was charred black by the lightning that descended from the sky, emitting green smoke. If it weren't for the emperor's sword protecting him, he would have died under the 9 heavens lightning tribulation. The important figures of the ancient desolate era factions were alarmed. There were even patriarch-level figures in the vicinity. However, no one dared to get close. This was the heavenly tribulation. No one was willing to attract the lightning tribulation. Even if they were far away, some of them were having trouble controlling the energy in their bodies. The immortal souls that grew up in the later stages of the ancient desolate era had yet to undergo the heavenly tribulation. Now that they sensed the might of the lightning tribulation, the energy of their immortal souls became restless. It was as if there was a pair of eyes staring at them. It was as if the power of the heavenly tribulation could descend on them at any time. Everyone's soul trembled in fear. Everyone could faintly feel that if they got close to the lightning tribulation, their heavenly tribulation would descend. Boom! Suddenly, a bolt of purple lightning struck down from the sky. The black-clothed sword emperor roared furiously, and he directly drove the pitch-black emperor sword to meet the incoming bolt of purple lightning while emanating unparalleled fluctuations of sword chi. Swoosh! The purple lightning and the emperor divine sword collided. Then, the emperor divine sword shook violently. In an instant, it was enveloped by the purple lightning and its light immediately dimmed. Bam! The emperor sword trembled and fell from the sky. On the blade of the sword, there were countless purple lightning bolts that looked like little snakes. The essence of the emperor sword was constantly being devoured. 9 heavens violet thunder, the Zhao clan's sword emperor is doomed. Some of the living fossils attracted by the heavenly tribulation saw this and knew that the sword emperor wouldn't be able to withstand it. What he had drawn was actually the 9 heavens violet lightning. That was one of the most powerful lightning tribulations in the legends. 81 bolts of lightning would descend from the heavens, and each bolt of lightning would be stronger than the one before it. Under the 9 heavens violet lightning, even the current powerful figures would have a slim chance of surviving, let alone the sword emperor in the celestial realm. The clan leader of the primordial Zhao clan and a few supreme elders appeared on a nearby mountain peak. Looking at the heavenly tribulation in front of them, they all trembled with fear. These people's cultivation was unfathomable. They completely concealed their auras and didn't dare to be careless. They were afraid that they would attract their own heavenly tribulations and then affect others. If that happened, the upper echelons of the primordial Zhao clan would all be finished. Entering an ancient place like the pseudo-heaven realm, although there was a risk of triggering one's own heavenly tribulation, as long as one was careful, the heavenly tribulation wouldn't come. However, if someone else was undergoing a heavenly tribulation right beside them, then they deserved it. The heavenly tribulation of others could trigger the heavenly tribulation of others. Under the cover of the heavenly tribulation, no one's cultivation could be hidden. The power of heaven and earth in the unseen world could trigger the heavenly tribulation of cultivators. Those who weren't undergoing a heavenly tribulation were like a barrel of gunpowder. The power of the heavenly tribulation triggered by others was like a spark. When a spark splashed into the barrel of gunpowder, one could imagine what would happen. The black-robed sword emperor of the Zhao clan was caught in the crossfire. He was affected by the heavenly tribulation triggered by Ji Yufei. The power of the heavenly tribulation also triggered the sword emperor's heavenly tribulation. It had to be said that the sword emperor of the primordial Zhao clan was really unlucky. Although the Zhao clan leader and the few great elders were extremely powerful and were the most powerful people in the world, they could only watch as the sword emperor of their clan was drowned by the 9 heavens' purple thunder that descended from the 9 heavens. As long as someone was undergoing a heavenly tribulation, they would run as far as they could. Whoever made a move would be unlucky and have to undergo the heavenly tribulation. No one would do such a stupid thing. At this moment, most people were attracted by the sword emperor's heavenly tribulation. The heavenly tribulation triggered by the sword emperor was too vast. The terrifying fluctuations could be felt from thousands of miles away. On the other hand, Ji Yufei's heavenly tribulation didn't attract as much attention. Ji Yufei stood quietly in the sky above the mountain that was split in half by the sword of divinity. He raised his head and looked at the rolling tribulation clouds. At this moment, he could clearly feel how terrifying the might of the world was. Under the might of the world, Ji Yufei felt as weak as an ant. The terrifying fluctuations emitted by the tribulation clouds were too powerful. Even Ji Yufei felt helpless. Although the power of the world was terrifying, it also aroused Ji Yufei's boundless fighting spirit. His battle intent was like a rainbow. His long hair danced wildly in the wind. He wanted to fight against the world. Boom! All of a sudden, endless 5-colored lightning surged out from the tribulation clouds in the sky. The lightning interweaved into a sea of lightning that shrouded Ji Yufei below. The entire world was torn apart by the 5-colored lightning that descended from the sky. It shattered and engulfed Ji Yufei in an instant. Big brother, when little Qing and Erebus saw this scene, although they were mentally prepared, they still turned pale with fright. As for Baron, he clenched his fists nervously. 5 elements lightning tribulation, Mahakala mumbled to himself. The soul flame in his skull pulsed violently as his soul power surged. He seemed to know the origin of this 5-colored lightning. At this moment, Ji Yufei sat cross-legged in the sea of lightning. He didn't resist. Instead, he guided the 5 elements lightning to his body. He was using the power of the heavenly tribulation to temper his physical body and spiritual soul. The 5 elements divine lightning was in his body. Under this destructive power, his meridians instantly collapsed. Blood seeped out of the pores all over his body. Under the first wave of the lightning, Ji Yufei's physical body was seriously injured. It almost collapsed. The power of the heavenly tribulation is so strong, Ji Yufei was secretly shocked. It should be known that his immortal divine martial constitution had been tempered thousands of times. It was strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with existences at the level of sect masters. However, it was so weak under the lightning. He didn't dare to be careless. He directly activated the internal world in his dantian and drew the endless life essence from the divine spring of life. Under the effect of the life essence, Ji Yufei's broken meridians rapidly reconstructed. His injured flesh grew and recovered quickly. The clotted blood and impurities in his body were immediately expelled from his pores.